Good morning. Welcome to the November meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have a very big agenda and lots of people from the public that we're looking forward to hearing from. Before we begin, I want to welcome our new board members. This is their first official board meeting, and we're delighted to have them here. Elise Baldacci. Online is Philip Huzzy, who is unfortunately not well, but is joining us online. And Will Kemmler, our student trustee from the University of Maine at Machias. We're very happy to have you with us. We're also today welcoming our new associate for the staff, Chuck Schuler. Where is he? He's here, isn't he? Okay, welcome to your first meeting. And we have the faculty representative at the table is William Otto from the University of Maine at Machias. Welcome. And we have there's so much good going on in this university system that we just want to take a minute to congratulate everyone for the enrollment numbers and the very great strides in retention. And all the good news that we see, and that Samantha Warren has done such a good job in getting out in the press. And among those good news, I think we have to take a minute and congratulate President Farini-Mundy. Not only did President Biden appoint her to the National Science Board, an extraordinarily prestigious position that well recognizes her expertise and brings glory to all of us, for which we thank you. She has also recently been named chair of the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. So those are the big boys. Think California, think those big systems. And our own Joan Farini-Mundy chairs that organization. So I want to congratulate you on behalf of the board. And with that, let us turn to public comment. We have received numerous materials from various groups. The board has read them, particularly around the issues of the Middle East. We've had issues about some personnel issues. We've had input from and have received the study from the University of Maine on worker compensation. The board has read all those. I want to make 2 points because I know these are deep concerns that are important, a little bit of history. First is that we did in the spring I met with the president of the Jewish Voice for Peace Student Club, SVP, and a group of concerned students from the University of Maine Law School on the issues of divestment and more broadly in the Middle East. We provided at that time a full listing of the University of Maine system's investments in Israel in response to those inquiries. I suspect some of you may not be aware of that. It was last spring, and I know things change, but that is available, and we're more than happy to share it again, and we'll do so. So I know many of you are requesting that. It's done, it's available, and we will get it to you. So, and it was something else I was going to say. Let's see. And I'm wondering if we might, most of you want to talk about divestment or the red line policy, and I would remind you also the board policy that is before us is in draft. It has been reviewed by stakeholders, including students, and we welcome comments. It is not finalized. It will be finalized, we hope, in the January meeting, but your input, of course, is much anticipated, but again, it's a draft. With that, I would ask your permission. Most of you want to talk about the same topics. There's one student, James Cook, who wants to speak to the University of Maine Student Worker Project. And I wonder if we might start with James Cook. And ask all of you to please keep to 3 minutes and remind the board that this is on YouTube and everybody needs to speak clearly into the microphones.
Thank you very much. My name is James Cook. I'm not a student. Boy, I wish I could impersonate one at this point, but I'm 53. But actually at UMA, I might be a typical one. But thank you. And I'm at the University of Maine at Augusta, where I am an associate professor of sociology. You should have had distributed to you a report on not University of Maine student pay, but UMA student worker pay. And actually, this is a replication of work that was done by professor of political science at the University of Maine, Rob Glover, with a student, Tamara Benson, in July of 2022 in the summer when the board received that report. It was supported as a project by the University of Maine at Augusta President's DEI Council, and we're grateful for that. For this project, we distributed surveys in the spring of 2023 to all UMA students working for the university. And student workers responding indicated the following, just to quickly summarize in an executive fashion. A large majority of the student workers there indicated agreement that they enjoy their job at the University of Maine at Augusta, but less than half indicated satisfaction with the level of pay they received working for UMA. 61% reported being paid a minimum wage, and no student reported being paid more than $15.99 an hour. Of student workers with children, all but one reported being paid minimum wage. All student workers were paid at a rate below a livable wage as determined by MIT professor of economic geography and regional planning, Amy K. Glassmeyer. A majority of the student workers at UMA have no employment besides their student job. The household income level most commonly reported by UMA student workers is less than $20,000 per year for an entire household. Most student workers are older than the traditional 18 to 21-year-old age range for college students. Less than a third live with their parents, and less than a third report that someone else pays for their housing. More than a third of the respondents agreed that during the past year, quote, I worried whether my food would run out before I got money to buy more. Slightly less than a third indicated being worried about losing their housing, and slightly more than a quarter reported losing housing for at least one night. And more than a third of the respondents indicated transportation problems due to the low pay that they receive that interfere with their attending classes. I'm not alone standing here this morning reporting this. This is work that was done with Professor of English Elizabeth Powers, UMA's very able BJ Kitchen, who's working in administration, and criminologist Richard Lum. But also I'm not alone because on Friday, October 18th of 2024, the UMA Faculty Senate received this. And I just wanted to let you know that they unanimously passed a motion saying the Faculty Senate expresses its deep concern at the level of pay for student workers. I hope that some form of board action will come. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And again, and we appreciate your meeting the 3-minute limit. We do have a busy agenda before us, but we want to hear from all of you and would very much ask you to keep to the 3 minutes. And I have Derek DeMello.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Derek DeMello. I am a history PhD student here at the University of Maine, Orono. I was also a high school social studies teacher where I served for 6 years proudly in a public high school. I'm here today to comment on proposed changes to Board Policy 214, Institutional Authority on Political Matters, which begins on page 191. At the January 2023 meeting, a bylaws working group was initiated by Chair Riley that has proposed revisions to Board Policy 212 and 214. As stated in the summary on page 187, quote, the working group has solicited and received input and comments from the student and faculty representatives to that board, as well as leadership of the system. These proposed revisions are proposed for public comment and will be considered for the final adoption at the January 2025 board meeting, end quote. Despite the recommendations of the bylaws working group, I am here to request that the board decline making these changes. As outlined on page 191, the recommendations of the working group would eliminate, quote, a standing rapid response advisory committee of 6 members, including 2 trustees, 2 presidents, and 2 senior UMS staff to be available. This rapid response team would be, when time permits, the reasonableness of making statements on issues such as climate change and so forth, climate change, labor standards, and immigration policy. Issues that are important or relative to society at large that may impact the institution or a student or its employees. Things have changed since the working group made its recommendations. On November 4th, Donald Trump was reelected as President of our United States. Mr. Trump has promised to cut climate regulations, eliminate the Department of Education, and according to his own website, quote, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history, and, quote, deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our colleges safe and patriotic again. These hateful and anti-intellectual pledges pose a clear and present threat to our students, teachers, and administrators, and genuinely the University of Maine system itself. We are gathered here in Orono today at the flagship university of that system. The people in this room are leaders for public education in the great state of Maine, and it is time to join in solidarity to resist the promised attacks to our planet, our education, our international friends, neighbors, and fellow classmates, and the freedom of speech on our campuses from student to trustee. This is a time where leadership needs to act nimbly. It is not the time to eliminate our Standing Rapid Response Advisory Committee and limit our own speech and ability to act powerfully. On January 13th, the board will vote on Section 214 on institutional authority on political matters. 1 week later, on Monday, January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th President of our United States. I ask that we stay united and protect the language in Section 214. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. James Fields?
My name is James Fields. I went to school here from 2009 to 2011. I cut trees now. There's no debate as to whether Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli state has made clear its intention to depopulate the northern part of the territory in order to resettle it. Every day is accompanied by news of new massacres. Famine conditions have been imposed on much of Gaza. The litany of horrors is too long to read in my 3-minute limit, but one among them, which this university should be particularly horrified by, is scholasticide. The schools and universities of Gaza have been razed to the ground. This is not some foreign problem distinct from our lives here in Maine, even though it might be comforting to think of it that way. Many institutions in Maine financially support and enable this war of annihilation through investments in corporations which are directly engaged in and profiting from the destruction of the nation of Palestine. And that's what you, as the entity in control of UMaine's financial investments, have control over. The University of Maine is financially complicit in supporting Israel's genocide of Palestine. UMaine must end this support by withdrawing shares in companies identified as engaged in and profiting off of these atrocities, or by directing the mutual funds which manage its money to do so. Our refusal to comply with demands for divestment is a decision to materially support genocide and settler colonialism. That is the content of the decision. You have a moral responsibility to oppose genocide. If there's an action you can take against genocide, you are ethically compelled to take it. Failure to do so constitutes dereliction of your obligations to your fellow human beings. The history of this institution strengthens the case for divestment from Israel. In 1982, UMaine was one of the first 10 universities in the country to divest from apartheid South Africa. I learned that when I attended school here as a philosophy major 15 years ago. Professor Douglas Allen, in whose classroom I studied the history of nonviolent resistance to imperialism, was one of those who made arguments to the board at the time. Learning that UMaine was on the leading edge of divestment from the apartheid South African state gave me a feeling of pride and confidence in this university. What if the board had decided otherwise in 1982? What if they had not only refused to divest, but even refused to formally consider the matter? If that had been our university's history, I would have felt no such pride. I would have felt shame. Shame at being part of an institution which made a conscious decision to continue materially supporting settler colonialism and white supremacy. Right now, you're faced with the same decision. 20 years from now, students will look back at this history. They will learn of the decisions made by this institution, by you, at this moment. Do you want them to feel pride or shame?
Thank you. Thank you. And I should apologize in advance if I botch any of these names. But we next have Emma Terora Jones.
My name is Emma Terora Jones. I graduated last spring from your anthropology and geography department at USM. I stand in front of you today as an alumni with little hope in your humanity after receiving news that not only your omission of the demands from your discussion and agenda today but also your active attempts at revoking our freedom of speech and academic freedom at UMaine institutions. Making these changes threatens the entire integrity of education your system claims to give to the Maine community. The credit the system has will disappear, and more students and faculty will find your inability to stand on the right side of history disgusting and unacceptable behavior of those who are supposed to uphold academic freedom and freedom of speech in public university systems. As an alumni, I'm disappointed and will forever regret my degree from this establishment if this is the direction you all decide to go in. The loss of academic freedom and freedom of speech at all institutions part of the UMaine system is a dangerous precedent to set and actively goes against the very nature of higher education. Alongside these proposed changes, your active ignorance towards the demands for divestment from the apartheid and genocidal state of Israel has proven your cowardice. Your discomfort in addressing a genocide is not the same as the fear of being in one. I ask you all today to put aside this discomfort and sit with the reality with which these decisions will genuinely affect. Don't be on the wrong side of history this. Your legacy as members of the UMaine System Board of Trustees will forever be tainted by these policy changes as you simultaneously ignore your students and community members in calling you to stand against genocide and uphold freedom of speech. I ask you to reconsider and listen to your community members and students in our calls for human and constitutional rights to be upheld. Thank you.
I would remind everyone that we have taken no positions and have a draft policy that we're reviewing. Abigail Fuller?
Thank you. My name's Abby Fuller. I teach sociology at USM. First, I want to urge the board to adopt the proposal submitted by University of Maine students to divest from companies that profit from Israel's oppression of Palestinians. Others have and will give eloquent statements in support of that. So I'm going to move on to my second concern. I was very alarmed to read the proposed changes to Section 212 of the UMaine Policy Manual, specifically the insertion of the words safe and safety in at least 3 different places to qualify the right to freedom of speech on campus. It's pretty obvious that these proposed changes are in response to the campus protests that have been ongoing against Israel's war on Palestinians in Gaza. At many campuses, students who support Israel have reported feeling unsafe, even though they've not been physically attacked or individually harassed. And I know that almost universally, the campus protests have very clearly directed their criticism at Israel, not at Jewish students per se. Unfortunately, on most campuses, college administrators have concurred and oftentimes labeled the campus protests as creating an unsafe environment on campuses. Of course, the university has a responsibility to ensure the material safety of students, but material safety is distinct from a feeling of safety. Feelings of fear can be quite real, but the university should not interpret those as a real danger and use them to shut down speech, and that is what I fear at the University of Maine campuses. For example, I'm wearing a keffiyeh, which is a long-standing symbol of Arab culture and more recently of support for Palestinians. Some would view this, however, as a symbol of violence and maybe feel threatened by it. The phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free," if you ask Palestinians and their supporters what that means, they'll say it means exactly what it says, that Palestinians should be able to live in freedom and with dignity and safety in their ancestral homelands. But others will tell you that that is actually a call for the expulsion and genocide of Jews in that area, and that is an unsafe statement to make. Finally, I support the right of Palestinians to engage in armed struggle against the military occupation of their lands in Palestine and in Gaza. This is a right that is enshrined in international law. Some people might label that as support for terrorism and tell me that saying that creates an unsafe environment on campuses. More likely, the proposed changes will simply serve to have a chilling effect on freedom of speech and such that individuals refrain from discussing controversial issues, lest they be accused of creating an unsafe environment. We should see controversies, political controversies like these, as teachable moments instead of time to restrict free expression. The exchange of ideas is one of the central ideals of higher education, and that means exposing students to ideas that may make them feel uncomfortable. I've always believed that the correct response to speech that we don't like is more speech, not less. We have a responsibility to our students to foster their intellectual and their socio-emotional development by
Thank
encouraging
you.
them to enter into uncomfortable conversations. Oh, is that my end of my time? Okay,
Yep.
I have one more sentence. I believe the policy as it stands now is sufficient to ensure the safety of students, and I urge you to reject the proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jamila Lavasser?
Good morning. I spent 4 years at the University of Southern Maine, and I graduated around 1983. I'm a resident and a taxpayer here in Maine. I am also Jewish, and most of my family was exterminated in the Holocaust. I am concerned about these proposed changes to board policies, specifically the policies 212 and 214 regarding free speech and academic freedom. Like the language used by universities across the country, the proposed changes to this board's policies may sound benign to the average person, but it's clear that these changes are designed to have a chilling effect on free speech and campus activism around important political issues, specifically around support for Palestine. During the time I attended USM, the two big political issues were South African apartheid and Reagan's wars in Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala. Thanks in part to global boycott, divestment, and sanction campaigns, the South African apartheid regime was eventually toppled. And thanks in large part to protests around this country, including on college campuses, more people came to understand and reject U.S. policy in Central America. Our campus was open to free expression, and it helped many of us to grow and develop critical thinking skills. Today, universities across the country want to stifle that free expression. Today, support for Palestine is labeled anti-Semitic on college campuses. I say, as a Jew, that criticism of Israel and support for Palestinian rights is not anti-Semitic. But the board's proposed changes are peppered with language about student safety, which has become a code word intended to suppress legitimate activism. Behind this language is a veiled threat that speaking up for Palestine may cost you your reputation, your job, your education, and your future. This university owes Maine residents full disclosure of its investments in corporations complicit in the Israeli occupation of Palestine, its apartheid policies, and its genocidal war in Gaza, a war which is another Holocaust. The students here today made an effort to have this topic placed on the agenda, and it appears they were stonewalled. As a taxpayer and a Jew, I want to see full disclosure and divestment from these companies. Thank you.
I do feel the need to clarify that we often receive comments in writing before a public meeting. I have not had any conversations with anyone or any formal requests to put this on an agenda. We're very happy to hear from you. We will take it under advisement through our executive committee at a later date, but at no point did anyone ask us to put it on an agenda today and we refuse. I want to make that very clear. We want to hear from you, and we will obviously take your guidance as we go forward. Kaya DeVries.
Hello, my name is Kaya DeVries, and I'm a first-year graduate student and teaching assistant at UMaine. I'm here today because I find the proposed changes to the University of Maine system's free speech policy deeply troubling. One proposed change, which was especially alarming, is to remove the line, "There shall be no restriction at any system institutions on these fundamental rights," referring to freedom of speech. I believe that freedom of speech and freedom of thought are inextricably linked. Without the space and freedom to discuss different ideas, which at times may include controversial or heated subjects, people will be deprived of perspectives different than their own. Protecting free speech, and in turn a space for the free exchange of ideas on campus, is vital to giving students the opportunity to listen and learn from many distinct perspectives. This is key in the reduction of personal biases, the development of empathy, and for building a more complete understanding of the world. The University of Maine's mission statement opens, "The University of Maine advances learning and discovery." This is the first of multiple references to the educational opportunities and chances to gain knowledge that come along with attending UMaine. The tradition of being a place for the free exchange of ideas has long been a defining feature of universities across the world. This is largely because such an exchange allows people to gain new information and knowledge, as well as allowing for the creation of new ideas, two of the foremost goals of higher education institutions, and a sentiment which is echoed in our mission statement. This is why I believe that the proposed changes to the free speech policy only serve to weaken an important feature of the learning that takes place on campus by removing the guaranteed protection of such spaces. So I suggest that the board reject the proposed changes to the free speech policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucas Bent.
Hello, my name's Lucas. I'm a senior computer science major from Berwick, Maine, here at the university. I'm here to touch on the university's investments into Israel, the purported benefits of those investments, and how this discussion relates to the proposed changes in the university's free speech policies. One thing that I've heard regarding the aforementioned investments is that they're meant to help students, particularly those in engineering and computing, by providing the university system with finances and opportunities. But whenever I hear this, I find myself asking, how can that really be true? How can we claim that these investments are helping students when these same investments are right now funding a scholasticide in Gaza? As a senior in computer science, I'm of course looking for opportunities to work and further my career after graduation. But as I wandered around the engineering and computing job fair this year, I felt lost. I could never work for any of those companies, nor would many of my peers. We could never knowingly work for a company which profits off of providing weapons and technology to a war machine committing human atrocities as we speak. By partnering with and investing in these companies, UMaine claims to be helping us. In fact, by pretending that these industries may be our only paths forward, UMaine is failing us. I would like to read the final line from the university's mission as published on the university website. Through integrated teaching, research, and outreach, the University of Maine improves the quality of life for people in Maine and around the world and promotes responsible stewardship of human, natural, and financial resources. In my view, the university's investments in Israel are unsustainable because they are fundamentally incompatible with this mission statement. Indeed, political speech critical of the university system will often claim contradictions between the system's actions and its stated goals. Therefore, I believe that to narrow the system's free speech policies, as proposed in the changes today, has the effect of silencing criticism of the system, no matter the merit. These are not actions which promote responsible stewardship of human, natural, or financial resources. Thankfully, the university has precedent for actions which do honor its mission. Some such examples rest within previous successful divestment campaigns at the university, campaigns which have seen UMaine rest on the right side of history. This includes the divestment campaign in 1982, as already mentioned. It also includes in 2022, when the University of Maine system committed to divest from all direct fossil fuel investments. When aligning with worldwide humanitarian movements, past divestment action at our university has a current reputation of success and acclaim. So, to conclude, I want to reread that final line from UMaine's mission statement, which was approved by this board. The University of Maine improves the quality of life for people in Maine and around the world and promotes responsible stewardship of human, natural, and financial resources. I read this statement, I look around at my university and at the world, and I don't understand. I don't understand how this is still our stated goal, even as we fund and facilitate the humanitarian, environmental, and scholastic crises in Gaza and the West Bank. even as we propose
Thank you.
restrictions on the freedom to speak about these very atrocities we're currently invested in. In my view, having it both ways is impossible.
Thank you. I have Asher Reisman, followed by Ashley Hebert. Asher?
Good morning. My name is Asher Reisman. I grew up a faculty brat at the University of Maine in Machias. I work now at the College of Education and Human Development as an administrative specialist. I expect to enroll in the spring as a graduate student in the history department. I started working at the university in the fall of 22 after returning to Maine to help take care of my mother, who was suffering and has since passed in December of 23 from an aggressive case of early onset Alzheimer's. In the midst of that great loss, the opportunity the university afforded me to renew my scholarly development was a great blessing. And it is thus in a filial spirit that I come to you, trustees of a future alma mater, to speak. In 1982, the board took action to divest what amounted to 1/3 of the university's holdings to militate against South African apartheid. Today, we are asking you to consider the divestment of holdings that, according to the board's report, constitute roughly 0.5% to clear the university of complicity with the ongoing actions of the Israeli state. I submit to you that whatever could be won of the legitimate security interests of the Israeli people by war-making must have been by now. And it follows that whatever remains to be won can only be secured through peace and diplomacy. And yet, as recently as 2021 and as early as the Suez Crisis, the necessary and sufficient condition to end hostilities of this kind has been the actions of an American president. While the divestment of the university cannot end these hostilities, it contributes to the reformation of the political environment necessary to achieve peace. It is a credit to the American people that since last October, all available polling has shown a transpartisan desire for an immediate ceasefire. Yet in an election year, neither party showed the slightest interest in being serious brokers of peace. Instead, we have witnessed a peaceful student movement led chiefly by Jewish American youth, maligned, surveilled, and assaulted, conflated with Nazism, under the banner of fighting anti-Semitism. Now, anti-Semitism is very real in this country. In the last 10 years, in less than that, we have seen far-right white supremacist violence motivated by it in Charlottesville and Pittsburgh. We witnessed the metastasization of anti-Jewish conspiracies, of white genocide, promulgated on social media, promoted by some of the world's richest men. We witnessed in Springfield, Maine, the construction of a Nazi war camp. These are the realities, and yet what we have witnessed is government and media elites maligning a peaceful student movement, a weaponization of anti-Semitism and its thoroughgoing conflation with anti-Zionism through the instrumentalization of the International Holocaust Remembrance Association's working definition of anti-Semitism, an application of that the definition's author, Kenneth Stern, has condemned. We ask that you divest. We ask that you protect free speech on this campus.
Thank you. Ashley Hebert, followed by Meredith Waters.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Ashley Hebert. I'm a graduate student in the secondary education program here at the University of Maine at Orono. First, I would like to clarify that on October 1st, more than 45 days prior to the meeting materials deadline, I did submit a written request to have our divestment letter officially considered on today's agenda. So I would like to clarify that is in my email exchanges with the clerk of the board. There is nothing I can say that could sufficiently describe the magnitude of horror that is being imposed on the Palestinian people by Israel, and with diplomatic cover and ongoing military aid from the United States. According to UN experts, as of this April, over 80% of schools have been damaged or destroyed by the Israeli assault on Gaza, with more than 5,479 students, 261 teachers, and 95 university professors killed, and many thousands more injured. As a future teacher and present student here, it is abhorrent to see that due to ongoing siege, the 2024 class of Gaza was unable to graduate, and it is very likely that the class of 2025 will not be able to graduate either. I am very grateful to attend this university. I'm a first-generation student, low-income student, and I feel that the administration here has made significant progress with social issues, including divestment from the fossil fuel industry. I know that we have the capacity to oppose these violations of humanitarian law as a learning community. We have passed divestment measures before, including in response to the apartheid system in South Africa. We are currently witnessing another apartheid state, and it is carrying out indiscriminate violence against civilians, the majority of which were women and children. And within that, children ranges from ages 5 to 9 years old. So I'm here to present a list of demands that we submitted on October 1st and to express unwavering support for them today. Number one, to continue to publicly disclose all investments in your statewide holdings portfolio. It's a great start, but we want to continue with this transparency. Two, to completely divest your managed investment pool, pension fund, and operating fund from all financial holdings, assets, and/or stocks of Israel-based companies, and of all companies doing business with or in Israel, in addition to full divestment from Israel bonds. If these are not made aware to you, you must direct the manager to those funds to divest, and those are listed in Addendum A of our letter. Three, to discontinue partnerships with companies proven to equip Israeli weapons and technology systems, which impose indiscriminate violence and detention onto Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. These are listed in Addendum B, and they do include American companies. Four, to end all academic ties with Israel, including research partnerships and institutional promotion and/or funding of study abroad programs to Israel. Five, to offer a public acknowledgement of the magnitude of tragedy in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, alongside neighboring countries such as Lebanon and Syria. And this is echoed by students from USM campus all the way up to here at UMaine Orono. Six, to adopt the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, which is written by international scholars working in anti-Semitism studies and related fields. I am taking this opportunity to familiarize you with these demands, in part because we see that this list was not added for official consideration to this month's BOT agenda, and in part because we feel it's essential to make these demands known to the wider UMaine community. Since submitting this letter to you all, we have published a public petition with the same language as this letter, and over 500 people have signed in support, including over 230 UMaine students, 100 alumni, and over 20 faculty and staff members. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge the addition to proposals to enact changes to freedom of speech and the ability for university leadership to make statements that could be deemed political. If passed, there is a high likelihood of unfair implementation against students who continue to voice concern about institutional matters, especially as those relate to academic divestment from Israel, but will absolutely negatively impact every member of our learning community. In closing, I plead you all to very much consider divestment from Israel and to move forward on a better foot, especially in accordance with what your school community is asking from you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate, we did receive that information. It is in our board books, and we have read it, and we appreciate the documentation, the detail in it. Meredith, water. Followed by Gracelyn Gabel.
Okay. Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm a fourth-year political science student here. I plan on graduating in May, which is very exciting. But I'm thinking a little bit long-term today, past my graduation, as I recently looked at the 5-year capital plan for the University of Maine and saw what our intentions are for new building projects and also maintenance projects on this campus. And when I read it, I saw the exclusion and just no mention of any liberal arts facilities or even shared student spaces on this campus. All of the funding projects were very much aligned with STEM and research and stuff that I think will hurt the liberal arts programs at this university, which are already hurting, right? so many of the liberal arts programs at this university are already hurting. If you go into Stevens Hall, you're going to find the paint is falling off the walls, right? And still, yet we are making sure that we are preparing factories of the future and building brand new engineering buildings that are shiny and beautiful, but we are leaving out a great portion of the student population when we are doing that. And you could argue, and I've heard that it's argued that a lot of these buildings are donor funded, which is awesome, and it's cool that they're kind of free, but they're not free, because in 40 years we're gonna have the same deferred maintenance problems that we do now with those buildings. And liberal arts students are gonna be paying the deferred maintenance on those buildings in 40 years, even though they're free now. Buildings that they don't step foot in, buildings that don't represent them, buildings that they don't learn in, and we're doing it now. I'm paying extra fees on my tuition bill for HVAC renovations in a hall I've never stepped foot into on this campus. So the more free buildings that we are building for research and engineering students, we have to remember that the liberal arts students are going to be bearing just the brunt of that deferred maintenance in a long time. And I just want to make sure that we're considering that. Those programs are important to this university. We're a public university. We should have as many degree programs as we possibly can to serve this state. And then those liberal arts degrees are going to continue to serve the state back later. And I want to make sure that it's good. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for reading the capital plan. Graceland Gabel, I think. I apologize in advance.
Good morning. My name is Gracie Gable. I'm a second-year transfer student studying political science at the University of Maine at Orono. I am here today asking the Board of Trustees to reject the drafted amendments to our policies on free speech and proclaim my support for divestment from all companies listed on our October 1st letter. As of November 15th, the official Palestinian death toll was over 44,000, with almost 17,000 of those deaths being children. In July, the International Court of Justice found Israel guilty of apartheid. In January, they stated that it's plausible that Israel has breached the Genocide Convention. And in September, a UN Special Committee stated that, quote, "The policies and practices of Israel during the reporting period are consistent with the characteristics of genocide." We are at a point globally where student voices matter. Our ability to speak freely matters. Amending the free speech policy at this time could potentially lead to fear from students to speak out on matters they care about due to unjust punishment from the university. Israel continues to ignore the voice of the international community, a community that does include UMS students, calling for an end to the violence. And by accepting these amendments, the University of Maine is putting itself in a position to not just ignore, but to silence the voice of its students, faculty, and staff. I want to be proud of the university I attend, and that means that divestment from companies supporting Israel, and that the university protects free speech, so students are sure in their ability to freely protest matters they are passionate about. I ask you to protect free speech and divest from Israel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Noah Charney, followed by Talia Cullum.
Thank you. I'm faculty in the Wildlife Department here on behalf of our students to talk about the Jerusalem Declaration on defining anti-Semitism. I come from a long line of rabbis and Jews fleeing persecution across Europe and the Middle East, and I'm raising my two kids as Jews in a synagogue in Bangor. This topic is incredibly important, so thank you for listening, and thank you really for all the time you give to this university. I know it's a lot of energy that you put into this, and I know you do it because you care. You care about the students, you care about our world, and I know you care about the people in Israel and Palestine. And I think that's true of every person in this room. We're all here because we care about people. And it's easy to look at the Middle East and feel hopeless, right? Like, any hope we have has to be based on some delusional fantasy of how things will ever get better there, right? For me, growing up as a Jew in Tennessee, where separation of church and state was vital to my survival, I actually think that a single secular state is the best way to have peace in the Middle East. And that's why I'm anti-Zionist, and you may call me naive or that impractical or Pollyannish, and those are fair critiques. But like the vast majority of protesters, we are not we're not the neo-Nazis who are marching in Columbus on Saturday, right? We are here because we have a love for people and we have a faith in humanity. So it's it's super important that we not retreat into our corners in this divisive times. You know, a month ago on Yom Kippur, our rabbi gave a sermon that just completely broke me because I completely disagree with his Zionist worldviews. But instead of like assuming that he was coming from a place of anti-Arab sentiment, just as he knows I'm not anti-Semitic, through my anger and my tears, I went up to him and I gave him a hug because, you know, I know that even though our words had become weapons, our hearts, beating blindly in the shadows of our chests, still yearn for the same thing. We all want what's best for humanity. And so that's what we have to do in this moment. We have to reach for the other side. And that's what the Jerusalem Declaration is. I think that adopting this definition of anti-Semitism is maybe the most important thing you can do here, right? It's saying to our students, you're good people, right? You're passionate because you're grieving for lives lost. And when you say things that we completely disagree with, if we think you're being naive or misguided, we're not gonna ostracize you, we're not gonna call you names, we're gonna put our arms around you and we're gonna hold on tight because you're ours and we know that you have love in your hearts. So thank you.
Thank you. Talia, come.
Hello, I'm Talia Cullum. I'm an undergraduate student in secondary education here at UMaine. I'm before the board to speak on behalf of the UMaine Jewish Voice for Peace chapter. We're a student organization founded and headed primarily by Jewish students who seek to criticize the state of Israel and build a Judaism beyond Zionism. An important point in the letter demands was the sixth point brought up by Ash, was adopting the Jerusalem Declaration definition of anti-Semitism. This declaration has been signed by over 500 professors and academics in Jewish, Holocaust, and religious studies all over the world, from Israel to our very own Maine. It outlines criticisms of the state of Israel, which on their face are anti-Semitic, and criticisms of Israel, which are not anti-Semitic. These distinctions are critical to protect the speech of Jewish students like me that seek to protest human rights abuses of the Israeli government and stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Alongside the proposed red line amendments to policies 212 and 214, which weakens language protecting freedom of speech and assembly, not having a solid definition of anti-Semitism on an institutional level could easily be weaponized against me and other anti-Zionist Jewish students to brand us as anti-Semitic, solely on the grounds that we disagree with the actions taken by a state and political movement which claims to fight for us. Does Israel fight for my interests when it kills over 40,000 Palestinian civilians? Does Israel fight for Jewish interests when they admit there was a high probability that at least 3 hostages taken on October 7th were killed by their own airstrikes? Israel doesn't fight for me or Jewish people, and saying as much is not anti-Semitic. I urge the board to consider adopting the Jerusalem Declaration definition of anti-Semitism and reject the red line amendments to policies 212 and 214 to protect the free exchange of ideas, which is so important to an institution of higher education like ours. An institution that clearly cares deeply for its students shouldn't weaken the protections in place for those students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kevin Roberge, followed by Willow Cunningham.
Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for your service. I'm aware that board work is quite tiring and requires a commitment to the institutions and responsibilities you serve. My name is Kevin Roberge. I speak to you today as the advisor for the Jewish Voice for Peace student organization, of which I could not be prouder, both of their words and their actions, the ways they've interacted with multiple groups and individuals. I'm also an adjunct instructor at the University of Maine, both in mathematics and also in gender studies. And I admit I didn't know about 212 and 214, and I'm a little concerned as I listen to these many words about the discussions that I would have in my classroom as we attempt to navigate difficult issues to make complicated those things which are simple. Not only the violence in Palestine, but also questions of racism, of gender identity, sexuality, especially in today's ever divisive political climate. So I would ask that you consider those very carefully. I would also add support for both Talia and my colleague, Dr. Charney, support for the Jerusalem Declaration. If you're not familiar with it, I would Google it. I wasn't familiar either until, again, the amazing students in the Jewish Force for Peace brought it to my attention. I think it'll be very important as we continue to have these public discussions about Israel. I recognize that you probably feel a little bit like a rock, between a rock and a hard place, navigating concerns about anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia. It's not an easy place to be in, though I imagine, as my colleague Dr. Jarni mentioned, that in your hearts you're deeply concerned about these things. I know several of you we've talked to in person have expressed as much. So I would add to those who have spoken already to call for greater transparency in investments and to consider that process of divestment. I would ask that you consider adopting the Jerusalem Declaration to better define anti-Semitism, to enable us to have careful and nuanced conversations. And I would ask you to consider how you might make a public statement condemning the violence in Palestine. We have relatively little problem condemning Putin's government. We can condemn the actions of Netanyahu's government without being anti-Semitic. We can condemn the violence that is happening to children, to women, to men, to innocent civilians, to scholars. I thought of this recently when I was receiving an email for commencement, right? We're starting commencement preparations here at UMaine. And as others have said, commencement's not going to happen in Palestine, and that was not inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Willow Cunningham, followed by Alan Rahill.
Hello, I'm Willow Cunningham. As a graduate student in the computer engineering department, I'm very proud of the education I've received here. I think it's one of the best engineering degrees I could acquire. However, I look at my career options and I see little that is not tainted by violence. Just this year, our own university became a founding member of the Maine Defense Industry Alliance, an organization including the Raytheon subsidiary Pratt & Whitney, which makes engines for Israel's F-35 jets. The Hague Court has ruled that supplying parts for these jets cannot be permitted, considering that there, and I quote, is a clear risk that exported F-35 parts are used in serious violations of international humanitarian law. It is estimated that these jets, among other Israeli aircraft, have dropped over 70,000 tons of explosives on the Gaza Strip in the last year. It doesn't have to be this way, though. Corporations like Pratt & Whitney are only able to profit off of human rights violations because our government and our institutions allow them to. In response to the situation in Palestine, universities across America and abroad have made moves to sanction or divest from corporations complicit in Israel's violation of human rights. In April of this year, Portland State University paused seeking grants and donations from Boeing. That same month, Evergreen State College established a task force to address divestment from companies that profit off of the occupation of Palestinian territories. In May, the University of California, Riverside established a similar task force. California State University, Sacramento adopted a policy to divest from corporations and funds that profit from activities that violate human rights. Trinity College Dublin and Union Theological Seminary committed to completely divest from corporations that profit from the occupation of Palestine. CalArts, San Francisco State University, and the University of Washington created committees to establish a path towards divestment. Divestment is not unprecedented among our peer institutions, and in fact, the UMaine system has been a leader of divestment campaigns in the past, some of my colleagues have touched on. In 1982, we were one of the first universities in the nation to divest from South Africa's system of apartheid. At the time, the board divested on the basis that apartheid conflicts with the values of the university. As has already been mentioned, Israel has been charged with the crime of apartheid. Have our values changed? Do we now support the crime against humanity of apartheid? Do we now support violations of fundamental human rights, such as the right to receive a good education, to exercise free speech, to live with dignity? If not, I urge the board to seriously consider moves towards divestment. Finally, I'd also like to touch on the red line amendments to policies 212 and 2114. These are very alarming to me. I believe that any moves to chill or limit free speech in times like this need to be considered extremely carefully. We can't go forward silent into the coming decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Eleanor? Followed by Megan Sarberlick.
Hello, members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Eleanor Allen Rahill, and I'm an undergraduate environmental science student here at the University of Maine. I want to start off by thanking you all for taking the time to listen to our commentary today and engaging in conversation with this community over such a critical issue. I'm here to talk about divestments from Israel. I appreciate you always taking our opinions into account when making decisions. That being said, I understand the challenges associated with operating in such a public position on behalf of an institution of education. Especially, I understand the hesitance to make statements and decisions that may be seen as political. However, I would like to point to the example that has been set by other institutions of higher education across the world, many of which Willow just mentioned. These institutions have begun the process of working with student organizers in disclosing investments, which I understand we have done, and I appreciate that very much, as well as in divesting from the military-industrial complex and implementing investment ethics centered around human rights. This list includes Brown University, Northwestern University, Portland State University, Evergreen State College, Goldsmith University of London, University of California, Riverside, California State University, Sacramento, Trinity College, Dublin, San Francisco State University, Wesleyan University, and others. The University of Maine would be in good company and set an impressive example if it joined these institutions in working with students like myself to find more ways to take money, time, and energy away from genocide. I encourage you to seriously consider my fellow students' testimony and proposed actions, which will help the University of Maine better represent student interests, increase transparency, and stay on the right side of history. As our state flag compels us to, let us lead. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Megan?
Hello, I want to start off by saying thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm Megan Soberlick, a student at UMaine, speaking with Here for the Kids and JVP as an economics major who's been observing the financial aspect of the BDS movement. After I came to you in Augusta last April, I was grateful for the chance to discuss the board's position on divestment with Mrs. Riley, and shortly after that received the UMS list of BDS investments. Speaking with Mrs. Riley, I learned more about UMaine's 1982 divestment from South African apartheid. Afterwards, I looked into the meeting minutes of this decision. In these records, when considering whether the board's investments can be insulated from moral and ethical responsibility, the board addressed that there would be certain investments which everyone would agree would be, quote, wholly unjustifiable. The BDS movement is meant to similarly address such investments. Gaza is home to the largest number of child amputees in history, with an average of 10 children losing a leg every day. Additionally, the UN Committee recently reported that Israel's warfare practices in Gaza are consistent with the characteristics of genocide, stating through its siege on Gaza, the obstruction of humanitarian aid alongside targeted attacks and killing of civilians and aid workers, despite binding orders from the International Court of Justice and resolutions of the Security Council, Israel is intentionally causing death, starvation, and serious injury, using starvation as a method of war. There's not been a day since I last met with you where a Palestinian civilian has not been killed. But in addition to these facts, I think it's important to note that the BDS movement is select in the companies it identifies as complicit. It does so through a number of databases available on its website that prove direct ties to legal occupation in Palestine and the ongoing genocide of civilians. On top of moral reasons for divesting, there are significant financial aspects to consider as well. Major institutions are divesting from these companies on top of municipalities, Portland, Maine being the fourth. The movement is growing and financial projections can reflect the impact of these divestments. An article from the Financial Post reported that Scotiabank, a major bank in Canada and the Americas, has halved its investments in Elbit Systems, making this decision based on investment merits. When I came to Augusta last April, I was with around 6 other people. At the time, 33,000 Palestinian civilians were dead, and now 43,764 Palestinian civilians are dead and counting. As daily acts of genocide have continued, notably more and more people on campus have been joining the movement to divest. To address the moral and financial expectations of UMS stakeholders, please divest from the complicit companies previously reported in light of significant precedent, continuing genocide, and financial considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamara Benson, followed by Zach Campbell.
Hello, my name is Tamara Benson, and I graduated from UMaine Orono in 2023. I'm here to stand in solidarity with the UMaine students who are calling on you, UMS Board of Trustees, to divest from Israel. As a previous member of Divest UMS, the student group who pressured you for years to divest from fossil fuels, I'm also here to offer a unique perspective. While I was walking my dog this morning, I saw a dead bird. It had flown into a window trying to escape the cold and had broken its neck. I know this seems unrelated, but I promise it's connected. I understand that you, the Board of Trustees, are tasked with the great responsibility of managing UMS's funds in ways that are sustainable, ethical, and financially strategic. You are much like the bird trying to find a safe place to get inside and stay warm to survive the cold. Sometimes when you're focused on a task at hand, it's difficult to see the full picture. It's easy to miss the window. I believe that a part of our responsibility as students and alumni is to alert you to the big picture. These students are trying to tell you that there is a window ahead, and if you're not careful, even if your intentions are survival, you're going to break all of our necks. Please believe me when I say it is in your best interest to listen to these students. We urge you to divest all funds from Israel in response to its ongoing apartheid policies against Palestinians. You know just as well as I do that UMS has divested from many things in the past, just as people have highlighted. Just as UMaine stood on the right side of history by divesting from South Africa's apartheid system, the same moral imperative applies today. Israel's systematic oppression, illegal settlements, and denial of basic rights to Palestinians mirror the racial segregation and injustice that once gripped South Africa. Furthermore, UMaine has demonstrated leadership in ethical investment by divesting from fossil fuel industries, recognizing the harm they inflict on the environment and society. Continuing this legacy of principled action, divestment from Israel's apartheid is essential to uphold UMaine's commitment to justice and human rights. I understand that the normalization of harmful, racist, colonizer political ideologies have made this issue seem a lot more complicated than it is. Maybe you're afraid that you'll be perceived as anti-Semitic if you divest from Israel. I assure you that being opposed to apartheid is not synonymous with anti-Semitism. The fact is that Israel is relying on an apartheid state to commit an ethnic cleansing, a genocide of Palestinians, and you are allowing our funds to support it. The students are urging you to take responsibility and divest from Israel, and I urge you to listen to them.
Thank you. Zach Campbell.
Hello and good morning, Board of Trustees. My name is Zach Campbell. I'm a Maine high school social studies teacher and a concerned taxpayer standing in solidarity with the noble student divestment movement. In January of 2024, the International Court of Justice ruled that it was plausible that Israel was committing genocide. Since then, conditions have further deteriorated. The U.S. said that aid into Gaza needs to increase to 300 trucks per day. Many aid organizations on the ground said only a fraction of those 300 trucks were actually getting in each day. In other words, since January when the ICJ made that ruling, it's gotten much worse for Palestinians. This university has both successfully divested not only from the South African apartheid state, but also from fossil fuel companies. The group of students that have been organizing this movement had created a very safe environment on campus. Never once has there been a call to marginalize anyone based on their identities. In this movement, we must be very cautious about protecting students' right to speak out and make grievances against policies they don't agree with. It's a core element of democracy that I teach to my civic students. The alterations that have been made public seem like a clear attempt to abridge students' rights to free speech. And while anti-Semitism is and always has been a problem in this country, and the university should go further to condemn and restrict bigoted speech, we should not make the mistake to think that anti-Zionism or disagreements with the policies of the State of Israel is somehow anti-Semitic. It is not. Uplifting Palestinians is not pushing down Jewish people. It is the Israeli government who prevents peace every day that it stops aid and drops bombs. Instead of working against these brave students and community members who will surely be seen on the right side of history, why not engage with them and fully divest from institutions invested in Israel's genocide of Palestinians? I was shocked to see how little this would actually mean for the university at large. Can this board not easily reallocate the money towards already existing companies not invested in Israel? It feels so easy, yet I see such a seemingly large effort to ultimately restrict the free speech and rights of students. This could be over and done with. I encourage you to work with the students to divest fully from companies tied to Israel, to further protect the rights of students by not passing the proposed changes, and to adopt the Jerusalem Declaration on anti-Semitism. When so many institutions have made the wrong decision to penalize students that have been speaking up, you can make the right choice and send a brave message that you will set things right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Bo Michaud.
Hi, I'm a third-year political science student, and as a liberal arts student, I am disappointed by the lack of investment in the College of Liberal Arts by UMaine and the Board of Trustees. I have watched the lessening of liberal arts courses or replacement via online offerings. I know less people are going into the liberal arts, but this investment creates a cycle. Less funding means less people go into the liberal arts majors, which means they get even less funding. University is finally in the process of working on, let's say, extensive backlog of maintenance. This inequality shines brightly here too. Engineering halls are getting built and repaired first, while Stevens Hall sits in disrepair and does not even look like it has any maintenance done to it since the 70s. You think since the university and you uses it so much for advertising, that it would be better taken care of. I bet some of you on the board were at one point liberal arts undergrads. So in the future, when you are given choices about how to fund this university for our academics and buildings, I hope you remember the 2,000 plus students in the College of Liberal Arts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your comments and your, we very much appreciate your compliance to the time limits. We will take up these issues with our executive committee. That will be a noticed meeting, and we will let you know as soon as that's possible. So thank you all very much. And I would suggest, this has been a mind-filling public comment, I'd suggest we take a 5-minute break and reconvene. Thank you all. Can everybody come back to the table, please? We are reconvening. Okay, Vice Chair Eames. Great, thank you all very much. I was remiss as we began the meeting in my eagerness to get to public comment. We also want to congratulate Trustee McCarthy for his successful reappointment to the board for a 5-year term. We do have some sad news to report, and that is that Rosa Redonit is retiring from her position as an associate vice chancellor. She's unable to be with us today. She's in a meeting, but I did want to acknowledge her extraordinary career in the University of Maine system. When I first was appointed to the board, I had a call from a high-ranking good friend in the community college system who said, "Meet Rosa. She's great to work with." And I think that is generally accepted, and she's just had a terrific career working with us. She's worked with the students on the student board. She will be missed, and we wish her all the very, 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 very best in retirement.
If I could just join in those particular sentiments, I'll have an opportunity to speak to her directly. She is at a conference and will be leaving us in December. It has been a privilege to work with her, particularly in onboarding me. She was extremely helpful, and I appreciate it greatly. 37 years within the system is quite remarkable, and the mention of the community college is that she helped oversee that relationship with the community colleges and had a counterpart who I think the two of them actually negotiated the deals between us for years without telling anybody. But she really did fantastic work, and she will be missed. And again, we will continue to celebrate her through the time that she's with us. But I did want to add my voice.
Great, thank you. So we'll send our best to Rosa in absentia. You all have the committee work plans in your board book. We're not going to be discussing them, but they all should, by reference as well, the strategic plan. I think Emily's been diligent about making sure that every committee has added that to their work plan, so those are before you. And a reminder that the next meeting is the 12th and 13th in USM. Let me turn to the first resolution, which is a resolution for Trustee Landry, who left at the conclusion of her short term. And let me read the text of that proposal. Valerie Landry served as a dedicated member of the Board of Trustees for the University of Maine system from 2023 to 24. She has been a respected and engaged board member, including service on the following standing committees: Human Resources and Labor Relations, Strategic Planning. Valerie Landry's insightful perspectives on the value of public higher education in a time of profound change and the need for transformational leadership provided impactful guidance beyond the length of her term. Throughout her time as a trustee, Valerie consistently demonstrated a judicial temperament that contributed to thoughtful and meticulous deliberations on all matters brought before the Board of Trustees and addressed at the committee level. Valerie also made significant contributions to the University of Maine system by stimulating and actively participating in efforts to advance AI and contemplate its impact on higher education. In addition, Valerie has also exhibited exemplary leadership through her collegiality and represented UMS effectively at the Association of Governing Boards annual conference, where her persistent and charming outreach to peers across the country led to important relationships and new information from other institutions to inform the board's deliberations. Could I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Cates. Any comments? If not, all those in favor? All those opposed? And I need to ask Donna Loring and Phil Huzzy to vote. Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. We next have where are we here? Let's see. We next have tab 2, the AI work group. I want to thank Owen McCarthy for taking this on. This has been a great development, and he will bring us up to date.
Well, thanks, Chair Riley, and wanted to go over the charge in the 3 areas we're working through on the work group, as well as since our last meeting, we have named the membership and convened our once a month, 1 hour for 12 months work group. We run a tight schedule in the group. And so as we set out in the work in front of us is 3 areas where we're going to be focusing on. One of them is really squarely in our board responsibilities, which is thinking about ways for us to both be aware of and provide any guidance as necessary on policies and frameworks, identify ways that we can both utilize the technology to streamline our efforts as we operate the board, and be ready to make recommendations to the FFT committee and proposal for how to do that forward on any AI-related funding requests that raises to that level. Not all AI requests will go to the level that will go to FFT. Number 2 area is really about encouraging the ethical and strategic use of AI across the institutions that we have. And to do that, some of those efforts are promoting awareness of great things that are ongoing. And I will say, since we've kicked off the work group, it's been pretty remarkable to find in different areas of the university the innovations of all types of folks, from faculty to staff to students, that are finding ways to use the technology to better embrace and do the work that they're doing. And so there's a lot out there. And then the 3rd area is a little more meaty, and we're going to provide a recommendation on how we think about playing in the long-term impact of higher ed and what that could do across the whole business model of how we operate, And while we're a board committee and we don't operate and do that, we will present ways we think that we could set up structures to do that and to go forward. The group that's been put together, I am chairing, though a new development is based on a high level of expertise and knowledge and background and ability to pull everything together. Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration Ryan Lowe will be co-chairing with me on this effort. Additional members are Kelly Martin from the Trustees, Vice Chancellor for Research, University of Maine, and University of Maine Machias President Joan Farini-Mundy, Chief Information Officer Robert Placido, President Ray Rice from University of Maine Presque Isle, Paloma Shelton is a student from University of Maine at Farmington who probably knows more about the topic than any of us, so we're glad we have her there. And then a faculty member from University of Southern Maine, James Suleiman. So we've had one meeting where we reviewed and kind of put this charge together and have sent it along to you, and our second meeting is tomorrow, and more to come as we go forward with this effort.
Great, thank you, and thank you, Ryan, for agreeing to serve. This is, all of us see the various rags and newsletters, that come up forward about various activities, and I think this is really an important undertaking to really take it head on and really have this conversation as a system as a whole, and lots of places are not as far ahead as this system, so it's really great work. Any comments or questions?
Actually, I will say, there's a lot of activity, and in the way generative AI has played out, it's a tool and a culture that you need to use these tools. And it's not like just an area where there's research, because people confuse other institutions in the state that do AI research and say, well, they must be further ahead than us. And I would disagree with that, because we have culturally a lot of people that are leaning in, and the tools are accessible to anyone that wants to do that. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to continue to be on the edge of this across a lot of things that we do.
Yeah, it's great, it's great. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, let's move on. We have, we are sorry to lose our faculty representative, Patrick Cheek, who has resigned, but thrilled that we have a new UMA nominee in Timothy Surratt, and I believe President Cushman is going to give us some background.
Yes, we are delighted to have Dr. Timothy Surratt as our new representative. He's an associate professor of education at the University of Maine at Augusta. Before joining UMA, he taught science at a public middle school and was an elementary and middle school assistant principal in Maine. His research interests are focused on early career teacher support and retention. He's active in civic life and currently serves as vice chair of the board of directors for the Holocaust and Human Rights Center of Maine, which is co-located at UMA. He's also serving in his third term on the school committee of the Bangor School Department. He lives in Bangor with his spouse and twin 9-year-olds, and UMA is delighted he will be representing us to the board.
Great. We'll meet him in a second. That the Board of Trustees approves the appointments of the faculty representative to the Board of Trustees as presented. Moved by Trustee Michaud and seconded by Trustee Kane. Any comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? And let me ask Trustee Loring? You there,
Yes.
Don? Yeah, thank you. And Trustee Hussey?
Yes.
Great. With that, welcome to Timothy Surratt. Please stand. Thank you. It's great. Why don't we have some policy issues to work through, but why don't we do the president's round robin right now? And let me start with President Rice, if I might.
You certainly might. Thank you, Madam Chair. With your forbearance, though, there's always wonderful things happening at the University of Maine at Presque Isle from faculty, staff, and students. But in light of the profound comments made during the citizen comment this morning, I want to just highlight two events that occurred at the campus over the past couple of months. One, the return of what we call the UMPI Diversity Dialogues, which were instituted back in 2016, and kind of were in a hiatus during the COVID pandemic period, and thanks to really strong efforts by faculty, staff, and students returned. We had our first diversity dialogue a week before the election. We have another one coming up this month and more scheduled into the spring semester, but those really give an opportunity for students to get together and talk about how to have challenging conversations and about the issues that threaten to divide us more than unify us, and how to have those discussions, and I really think are at the core of what universities and colleges do. So really pleased that that's happening. We had such a successful one about microaggressions just before the election. The other one I'd point out is we were really proud to have a screening of the film Mary and Molly, which was we were fortunate to be joined by the Penobscot Native Tribal Elder, artist, author, director, and trustee of this board. Donna Loring joined our campus on November 7th for a showing of her film as co-director, and to have a discussion, a panel discussion with a smallish but very enthusiastic audience. It's the kind of event that I would like to see virtually everybody be able to participate in. And that film, of course, is about the institutionalized removal of Indian children from their families by the state, but also in Trustee Loring's words about the identity and recognition of Mary and her Penobscot heritage. Very moving event, and again, I think is at the very core of what we do as institutions of higher education. And my thanks for Trustee Loring for participating and making that event possible.
Great, thank you. President McDonald.
Well, the cross-country season has ended. The North Atlantic Conference cross-country champions is the University of Maine at Farmington. We have 5 of the 9 named students on the first league team in the whole league. 5 of them are from Farmington as the first team. UMF student Justin Castellato is the runner of the year. He won the championship by 1 minute faster than the next person in a 26-minute race. So he's fast. UMF student Jimmy Reel was elected by all of the coaches in the conference as the Senior Scholastic Athlete of the Year. He is a double major in actuarial science and math with a 3.7 average. Our coaches, Sean Cannabis and Lee Hollis, were the coaches of the year. So it was a great season. So I want to recognize them. The second thing that I'd like to raise as we discuss the success in retention, I want to just highlight what we call our Learning Commons, which is a peer tutoring, peer advising program where we embed high-achieving students in very difficult classes and help students. We have 39 students that are participating as tutors and as embedded in these classes. We have about a third of our student body participating in this program, and the results have been remarkable. Remarkable in that the GPA average of these students is higher than other students, that the retention is better, that the number of credits they're taking is more. It is just a extraordinary success, and it is not only a success for the students who go to the tutoring, but for the tutors themselves. You know, anybody who teaches knows that the only way you get an education is by teaching, and so these students are really enhancing their not only their knowledge but their service to their fellow students. And I just give a shout out to this Navigate system which is an electronic system that we use, because with that we are able to schedule all these students. We're able to get feedback is really a very good use of that. So it's a success all around, both on the cross-country field and in the learning commons.
Thank you. President Softly.
Thank you. I don't know why President McDonald keeps talking about sports when we, never mind.
Wait a minute, we did that without a turf field.
You did? Or an airplane.
Could you imagine?
Thank you, thank you.
Could you
My
imagine
point.
how fast they would go on a turf field?
It just gets worse all the time for me. I just would like a little sympathy. All right. So my focus this morning is on the extraordinary faculty at Maine Law and their connections with our students. Even as we speak, our environmental program, which is really extraordinary, led by Professors Anthony Moffa and Charles Norkey, is a growing sense of pride. Our students are on their way back today. They may actually be back from the Conference of the Parties. That is the International Conference on Climate, this year held in Azerbaijan. And we are incredibly proud of the 3 students who went with, my time is up. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
We'll move on now. Deb, how are you? Wait, just wait. So I'd also like to tell you about Maine Law's clinic programs, which are reaching out all through the state of Maine right now. We just held an open house for clinic alumni. It filled the living room at the center. Legislators attended. It was a wonderful event. And I want to shout out to Representative Mark Ducharme, who came from Madison to attend the open house and learn about the expansion of the clinics. At the conclusion of the event, Representative Ducharme spoke eloquently about the rewards and joys of living in rural Maine. And when he concluded, he had a line of students lined up wanting to talk to him about practice in rural Maine. It makes a huge difference when legislators attend. And finally, we are excited to report that the Royal Asiatic Society in London, England, recently named a prize in honor of Maine Law Professor Charles H. Norkey, the Benjamin Thompson Professor of Law. The award is conferred annually for the publication of a book about Afghanistan. Professor Norkey, for those of you who don't know him, spent much of his early life in Afghanistan and writing about it, and we have dug up some old photographs. So if you go online, you will see Professor Norkey 40 years ago. It's a wonderful thing. I recommend it. You can also apply to go to Maine Law if you go online to our site. That's it.
Thank you. Let me go. President Edmondson, we can't see you, but we know you're there. There you are.
Hi, well, it's afternoon here. It's morning there. It's great to be with all of you, and I do want to give a special thanks to the Chancellor and to Chair Riley for allowing me to join this meeting via Zoom so that I can attend the American Association of State Colleges and Universities conference. This conference brings together about 300 presidents and chancellors from across the country who lead public universities like ours. And so I'm hoping to bring back some good information for all of us from these meetings. Quick update on the University of Southern Maine. I do want to follow up on Trustee McCarthy's comments about the AI and the progress in AI at our university system. The Southern Maine AI and Digital Sciences Conference.
Uh-oh.
The cable broke.
Where is she? Jackie, if you can hear us, we can no longer hear you. You are frozen.
Picture's good.
Yeah.
Yep. Hello, hello.
Well, she might want to go.
Yeah.
Hello.
There you are.
Here we go. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. But as I was saying, we will be having a Southern Maine AI and Digital Sciences Conference on December 6th at the University of Southern Maine. It's being led by Professor Ashanti Maxwell from our engineering program. And so we're excited about that. Our enrollments, we're really proud of the fact that we did have an increase in 1.9% in our credit hours during census, and I think it's good for you to hear a little bit about the nuances there. We did have the largest percentage of undergraduate students identifying as non-white in this current enrollment. Our enrollment rebounded in feeder counties like Cumberland, York, and Androscoggin counties, something our admissions team worked hard to realize. We saw a 44% increase in students transferring from the Maine community college system, and our transfer students were up 12% overall. And we have 50% of in-state students graduating without debt. This is something that was true last year, and it stays true this year. And finally, our Adult Student Success Center had a grand opening in the Glickman Library on our Portland campus. And I do want to thank, again, the Chancellor and the University of Maine system for supporting us with this important work. I'd mentioned before to this group about our radio stations, WMPG, and their success with the documentary film, An Extraordinary Place. It has now been featured at 15 film festivals around the world, and it has garnered 6 awards, so we continue to be very proud of that. And WMPG added an online station, Studio 51, to our Gorham campus in the fall of 2024. And 2 more quick things. One about our Career Hub. Our Career Exploration Internship Program has received over 100 applications for 50 paid internships next spring. Our program requires that all applicants meet with a peer career guide, tailor their resumes and cover letters to the program, and all CEIP student applications applicants conduct a first round interview with a Career Hub staff member where they receive constructive feedback and coaching on their interviewing skills before they're matched with opportunities and then interviewed by employees. So we're quite proud of the work happening there. And finally, I want to mention that our women's soccer team won the Little East Championship just last week for the 3rd year in a row, and we're really proud of that work as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll look forward to next round robin and reports from the conference. President Hedin.
Sure, I thought she was.
I was looking that way.
Good morning, everyone. Love to provide updates of what's happening up at UMFK. Just on Friday, November 15th, the UMFK Board of Visitors hosted their business breakfast. And the topic this fall semester was untapped resource hiring international students. So we have a number of international students that after they complete their degree, they'd want to make Fort Kent their home. And it's quite a laborious, detailed process to make that happen. So we had a panel session to help navigate that process. Our campus rep was Leslie Kelly, and she shared while the student is on campus, they can participate in CPT, which is the curricular practical training, OPT, which is optional practical training, or STEM OPT. We also had Marcus Janus, who is the immigration attorney for UMS. He provided excellent information to the business owners that were in attendance for the breakfast, how to navigate the non-immigrant classification, temporary status options. We also had an employer, Justice Dubois, who you've met before as the UMFK BOV president. And then we had a student rep, Daniel France from Germany, who also now is employed by a business in Fort Kent. So that was a really helpful informational session. We really want to be able to help more of the employers in the surrounding area be able to hire our international students. The week before, on Friday, November 8th, we hosted our Veterans Day ceremony in our newly established Veterans Square. It was a lovely ceremony, and then lunch followed after that. The night before that, on Thursday, November 7th, we had our student leadership dinner, and the topic this year was respectful environment, which is a focus area within our strategic plan, and it focused on the DEI components. And the topics that they were discussing during that evening leadership dinner focused on diversity experiences that have enriched their lives, diversity experiences that have been unkind or of concern, and why students choose not to report such situations based on the process that needs to be followed, and then ideas for improvement for individuals and for campus. And from that conversation, they provided really, really great insight and helpful information. Some of it was sad to hear and a little upsetting for some of us, but also will help to improve our campus and community environments. And their recommendation was, hey, this was really helpful for us. It'd be neat for faculty and staff to be engaged in the same process. And so our campus development day is set for January 15th, and our faculty and staff will be engaging in the same process, a similar process, to complete the cycle. And then last, just an update on this piece. Once a month, they have open mic night on campus where students can come in and they can do, and faculty and staff too. And it's amazing who walks in to sing or share a poem, or we have found we have some comedians on campus. And we're always looking for the singers who can then be a part of commencement and sing the national anthem. So we found a couple good singers at the last one. But it's just such a great way to hang with students. It's one of my most enjoyable times in the semester to be in that room with them and watch their creativity and their positive energy and working together and dancing and singing. It's delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. President Cushman.
Thank you. Well, the rankings are out, and in U.S. News and World Report for Best Colleges, University of Maine at Augusta made the rankings for Regional College North, top public schools, and nursing, and earned a nursing badge as a ranked institution. And the Military Times just released the 2024 Best for Vets college rankings, and University of Maine at Augusta ranked #1 in Maine, #8 in the Northeast and Islands, #21 overall for offering both in-person and online courses. Also #75 in public institutions and #96 overall nationwide. It's a great acknowledgement that with flexible scheduling, online and in-person classes, and a dedicated Veterans Academic Center, we are committed to supporting our active duty personnel and veterans. In athletics, in their second year of competition, the men's and women's soccer teams showed growth, highlighted by the selection of Gabby Allen from Palermo, Maine, as both a YSCC All-Conference player and a USCAA All-American. 10 UMA fall athletes were named to the USCAA National All-Academic Team, and UMA student athletes contributed to 6% of UMA's fall 2024 credit hours and made up approximately 46% of students living in our residence halls. Finally, two of our biology faculty, Jennifer Long, Assistant Professor of Biology, and Marielle Postava-Davignon, Assistant Professor of Biology, were featured on an episode of New Hampshire PBS. Drs. Long and Postava-Davignon's research on the effects of human interaction on Canada jay behavior and nest predation was featured on Season 19, Episode 6 of the New Hampshire PBS show Windows to the Wild, hosted by William Lang. Episode 6, entitled Bird in the Hand, was broadcast on November 7th.
Is worth two in the, no, just, thank you. President Fernie-Mundy.
Thank you. I'd like to say that all of the items I'm going to mention in many ways are due to incredible initiative, hard work, deep commitment among our faculty, staff, and students. There is so much going on right now on the campus, it's hard to choose what to speak about, but I will mention that the Strategic Re-envisioning Initiative, the SRE effort that's been underway now on the campus since May. It continues. Hundreds of faculty, staff, and folks involved in providing ideas. We're shifting into phase 3 now, where smaller groups are digging deeply into data, are looking carefully at evidence, are looking at the national, state, and local contexts. And I just want to thank all of the people who are involved in that, who are sticking with that, because it's going to produce some new visions, new ways of thinking about the university. A couple of highlights in addition to the great SRE work. We did celebrate the groundbreaking of the Green Engineering and Materials Building a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me. This factory of the future will be an international model for how digital manufacturing and advanced manufacturing technologies can be fully integrated with adaptive learning spaces. Now that all sounds kind of jargony, but what it actually means in practice is this building is being designed to be a teaching lab in the spirit of a teaching hospital, where folks will come together to do their science, do their engineering, but also where students will have spaces and facilities that let them work on, as our Dean Giovanna Guidoboni calls them, mini-gem projects. So they can do the sort of practice versions in the context taste of that work and then move to bigger emphases. That project has funding coming from federal, state, and philanthropy sources. We're very grateful to everybody who's been a part of it, but it also will have some direct impact on the state of Maine in manufacturing areas such as affordable housing, marine vessels, renewable energy, and more. So we're very pleased to see that moving forward, grateful to all the supporters. In the same sort of general vein of science and engineering, the Versant Astronomy Center celebrates its 70th anniversary this year, quite early for a university astronomy center. And some of their cutting-edge work, just as we heard about cutting-edge work in GEM, is to branch out into the performing arts as an important partnership within the Astronomy Center. And the current director, Sean Losh, conceives it as a modern visualization theater. So we have partnerships going on with the performing arts, with plays and choral performances, cosmic visuals. It's a very interesting place that is pushing out at the edge and definitely giving definition to STEAM, the STEM acronym expanded to science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. And so we've got some of that very interesting work happening here. University of Maine at Machias and University of Maine at Augusta have completed their work in partnering for a nursing pathway, which is going to be critical for down East Maine and particularly for Washington County and the Machias area. This new track is launching in 2025. We have tremendous interest from students, very thankful to our colleagues at UMaine Augusta and all the faculty who work together to make this come together. We see it as a great example of a unified accreditation kind of activity. UMaine is involved in a pilot with the U.S. Department of Education on FAFSA. Basically, as I understand it, there was an opportunity to apply to be a part of this, and so UMaine and UConn are the two New England universities that are in it. And it's basically testing out some of the changes that the Department of Ed is making in FAFSA at an accelerated rate. So we've had some access earlier than the overall opening of FAFSA to students so that the group here at UMaine could actually test out whether the systems that are in place will work when they go big with the department's engagement, and we're seeing some interesting results. We're just very pleased to be a part of helping to continue to address FAFSA issues. And then finally, women's soccer at UMaine is the America East Conference champions this year, so very exciting. They did go to the NCAA and played well, but didn't beat Wisconsin, and so we're very hopeful always for next year, but they've done a great job this season.
That's great. And we're glad you're being the canary on the FAFSA.
Well, we're trying.
Great, thank you. Lots of excellent reporting. Wow, good stuff. Let's move on to the Chancellor's report and a deeper dive into the enrollment and retention successes, what's caused that to happen, and, oh, did I forget something? Yes, I did. I forgot the red line, but I didn't mean to.
Some tab 4 and 5 to do.
We do, and we will. Sorry, everybody. We have the red line board policies 212, 214, which we heard about here today, which is the first read, and a finalized policy 204.1, and Trustee Alexander will walk us through that.
Thank you very much. The red line versions of 212, which is the board's free speech, academic freedom, and civility policy, and 214, which is the policy with respect to the institutional authority on political matters, were the subject of extensive reviews prior to the red lines that you see here today, with the student representatives, the faculty representatives, and our legal counsel. And there was never any intent, and I hope to confirm this by communicating with those who are concerned, to restrict in any way the current rights and remedies of students or faculty with respect to these important matters. Some of the language in the current policies simply had no basis in law, and we used words that the legal folks know what they mean. But the important point here is that the board policy is a very high-level document. It is not, it is intended to provide guidance and it is implemented at a university basis, and is then a document that the presidents in particular can rely on to develop their own more detailed policies about how to implement these important rights, which we all share and desperately need to continue to share and make use of. The 214, I think there's been a misconception by some people. All of the stuff that is eliminated is to eliminate the board's attempt to actually control the speech of certain individuals employed by the university system. And so freeing up the policy to eliminate that level of detailed oversight was our intent with respect to this particular document. Again, these are red lines. They will continue to be the subject of comment, and we intend to try to communicate, understand, and properly respond to any comments that we receive over the next several weeks until the January meeting. If you want to do, those don't require a vote.
Right.
But if there is any board discussion of those, we can hear that. But the next one is the final adoption of Board Policy 204.1, which is the evaluation process for our presidents, and which was discussed and presented as a proposal in the most recent prior board meeting. So,
And I think your outreach to the students to get some clarification on what we heard today is great.
Absolutely.
So that will be important and inform our discussion in January. So thank you for your willingness to do that. Any comments or questions about that before we move to the resolution? Seeing none. That the Board of Trustees, nope, seeing one. Sorry, I'm sorry. Trustee,
Yes, I wanted to thank Trustee Alexander for leading us through all that we've done there. And I thought it was most unfortunate that somehow the interpretations were exactly opposite of what our
What the
intention
intent was.
was. So there's something to be learned there. I'm not sure what, but I was concerned about that. But I did want to say that I thought that the comments that we got from the public, from the faculty and staff and students was great. That was very collaborative, and I thank Trustee Alexander for coordinating that. But also the comments that we received today, I thought were amazing, that such good, honest, frank, clear discussion from our young people and some older folks was great. I just thought that that's the way civil discussions should take place. I just wanted to recognize all those people for what they did today.
I think I certainly agree. And we will do, Trustee Alexander will reach out to the group and get some representatives to make sure that we have a chance to explain what our intention was. And it is hard when you read these red lines.
Right.
So that we can get this language as strong as we can. Trustee Cates?
Thank you. Before we vote on the resolution, it's just a question. It's a little bit off topic, I guess, but how we deal with demonstrations on campus, how we deal with encampments on campus, how we deal with people going into buildings and maybe not wanting to leave right away on campus. I understand we've delegated to the individual presidents to develop those policies rather than do a system policy. Just inquiring where we stand in that overall process and whether we can see as a board the policies which are developed at each of the individual universities.
We will do that.
Thank you.
And I think it's well put that the board's policy is the overarching policy under which the campuses operate. So,
right.
Any more discussion?
If I might, just on one point that the trustee made, for a number of reasons, I think it's important that our individual universities' interpretations of the discussion today and the leadership that's being expressed But I would hope that they would be largely in alignment with one another, as opposed to giving rise to differences and then potentially ending up in the courts, since all of our employees are employees of the system. So I just 100% agreement and appreciate the strong advice, but I think we ultimately need a policy that applies to all of our employees.
Just one more thing. The reason I raise this is because in going through old boxes in my basement over the weekend, I came through dozens of newspapers talking about the occupation of University Hall at Harvard University in 1969, when I was there. And one of the criticisms which came through loud and clear from the students was, we didn't know what the rules were first, and the rules got changed as we went along and changed again. And so nothing changes under the sun, I guess. But the lesson was get the guidelines in place so that everybody knows what they are. Thanks.
Those of us who remember those days.
I will say that in our discussions with the presidents, it was my understanding, but we did not review them, that they all had very written policies with regard to scheduling rallies and when free speech became civil disobedience. And a lot of people don't like that, to draw that line, but that's what we need to make clear.
Well, we'll collect them and take a look at it, and this is a work in progress, I'm sure. With that, let me go to the resolution that the Board of Trustees approve the final version of the edited Board Policy 204.1 as initially presented in red line form at the September 2024 Board meeting and provided at the November 2024 Board meeting in final form. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Alexander, seconded by Trustee Eames. Any comment? Sorry, Mike and Emily.
Madam Chair, for those listening, I think it's just important to say that the policy we're about to vote on is not the ones we were just discussing.
Correct.
Because I think it's important for those who might not be following along with the details, but just the narrative.
Right.
This is a separate and distinct policy about review of employees and reappointments and nothing to do with any of
Correct.
the things. That's a later
Yep,
conversation.
that's the one we just talked about.
Yeah. I can
Section.
just imagine
Yep,
someone
very
listening to
good
the
point.
meeting and being
Policy
like, wait
two-
a second,
yep.
did they just pass that?
Policy
Thank you.
212 and 214, which we will get more information on, are in draft. Those were the ones we heard about this morning. This is a very distinct and different one. Any comment? Any more? But thank you, that's a really good one. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Great, the motion passes. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to the January meeting with a robust background review so that we can get our policies correct. Now, let me turn to the Chancellor and to the discussion of enrollment, among other things.
Yes, amongst other things. It's great to have completed my first semester visits to all of our campuses, and there were interesting discussions, lots of good questions, and we even resolved some problems as we went along on those days, and very much enjoyed spending the time with the presidents and their leadership teams as well. I would also say that we're off to really quite an amazing first semester of the year on a system-wide basis. You've heard some of the successes, but our presidents were being shy today. They have many more accomplishments to take great pride in, and I take great pride in their work. And I also take great pride in the ways that our presidents and our vice chancellors are working together to bring about results, some of which we will celebrate in just a moment or two. But very much appreciate the work that's going on campus to campus, and the amount of discussions that the presidents and vice chancellors and myself are engaged in on an ongoing basis, where we resolve problems or issues to majority liking, if not universal liking. And I very much appreciate the attitudes that people come to that process and very much appreciate that. I am going to turn it over to Jeff to touch on enrollment report, but specifically to talk about not only enrollment, but what is groundbreaking with respect to our retaining students, and it has a major impact. As he gets up there, I will say that the amount of work going into these issues over the last few years is been quite dramatic, and quite frankly, these results are pretty darn good in comparison to like universities in New England, the area that we're measured with. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Chancellor, thank you. I'm mindful, and I said this to our Board of Visitors earlier this week, I'm mindful of the chair and the trustees' call to share both the good news and the bad news. I have very little bad news to report today. I hope I'll be forgiven for that failing when I get through this enrollment and retention update. Undergraduate headcount, enrollment, and credit hours are up. Graduate headcount, enrollment, and credit hours are up. System-wide in aggregate, headcount enrollment is up 3.1% for fall over fall, 23 to 24, and credit hours are up 4.2% fall to fall, 23 to 24. That's tremendous news for all of our universities and our system as a whole. I have just a few highlights to share from each of our universities, starting with the University of Maine. The incoming class of degree and certificate seeking students, that's the full-time, first-time class coming in for UMaine this fall, stands at 2,019 students. I worked at UMaine for 12 years. In any year, surpassing 2,000 students at the University of Maine is a significant benchmark and a sign of good news for the fall incoming class. That's an increase of 206 students, or 11.4% over fall of 23. Given its relative size within our system, achieving a double-digit increase from one year to the next is extraordinarily difficult to do at the University of Maine, and I commend them for all the work that they did to hit that mark this fall. Good news as well for the University of Maine at Machias, where credit hours for students are up 8% over fall of 2023. That's a sign of more students taking a fuller load across the board, which is good for them for degree progression, good for them for future degree completion, and a sign of strong advising at the University of Maine at Machias. University of Maine at Augusta increased its full-time, first-time class by 8.1% over last fall, and graduate enrollment increased significantly. UMA is just on the cusp of 100 graduate students at its university. The number is up 35.6% over last fall in their few but growing graduate programs at that university. University of Maine at Farmington saw a significant graduate headcount enrollment increase, 22.6%. First-time, full-time undergraduate students are up 16.5% over last fall. And in particular, President McDonnell alluded to this, but I just want to say it. Undergraduate transfers are up 47% at the University of Maine at Farmington fall to fall. That's after converting from a 4-credit to a 3-credit degree system just a year and a half ago. It's an enormous amount of work that has gone into the increase in students and the increase at transfers. And I want to just note that and commend President McDonnell and his team. University of Maine at Fort Kent is up in students overall 4.1% compared to fall of 2023. Graduate enrollment doubled for the few but growing number of graduate programs at the University of Maine at Fort Kent, and they are also just on the cusp of 100 graduate students program-wide. They're at 98 this fall, so kudos to President Hedin and her team for their work. University of Maine at Presque Isle is up overall enrollment by 662 students year over year. That's a 44% increase. They still don't have a turf field, but they're doing really well on enrollment, so congratulations to President Rice and his team. I would also note that entering transfer undergraduates are up a remarkable 377 students in 1 year at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. The reach of the Your Pace competency-based program continues to amaze and delight all of us. University of Southern Maine saw entering transfer undergraduates increase by 11.8% over last year. I want to say that President Edmondson and her team have done remarkable work in turning around an enrollment decline that she saw when she came into office and producing strong enrollment outcomes for her university in the short time that she has been at the helm. Graduate student headcount at USM is also up 3.4% over last year. Last but not least, University of Maine School of Law up 4.1% in student enrollment and up 4.8% in credit hours fall to fall, 23 to 24. And finally, the Chancellor also encouraged me to note our retention gains. It's really hard to put this into perspective, but I'll try very briefly. So we've seen a historic one-year increase in retention at the University of Maine, significant increases in retention at USM and at Farmington and elsewhere in our system. And system-wide, just for trustees' perspective, we normally run as a system fall to fall 72, 73, 73.5, 74% enrollment. So in general, just under 3 out of every 4 students who started with us in any given fall come back for the following fall. Our aggregate return rate for fall 2024 is 75.7%. That's the highest recorded return rate for our university system in 20 years, the 20 years that we've been keeping data in that category. So it's a tremendous achievement for all of our presidents, all of their teams, and our system as a whole. The last thing I'll say, and I'm happy in the future, not now, but if the trustees would like more of background on this, there are a couple of areas that are producing the retention gains that we're seeing. One is research learning experiences now being offered across the system. There is no doubt, we have the data, well, Provost Volin and President Hadeen and President Freeney Mundy and others have the data, but the data is clear that research learning experiences are producing a better capture and producing better persistence for our students across the board. The second is something that President McDonnell alluded to when he talked about Navigate. Navigate is part of an intrusive advising platform and philosophy that we have been applying over the last several years. Intrusive is a positively valenced term in this context. There's more direct reach out to students where they live, which is on their phones. They can schedule and receive information about advising appointments on their phones. They can receive reminders about upcoming course registration on their phones. My son is one of those students. He lives on his phone. And I know that from the University of Maine, he's getting information all the time about his academic life and future, where he spends much of his time looking, which is his phone. So intrusive advising has been a big advantage for us. In the future, and I'll end with this, I do plan to report on some other data that we're investigating with our system institutional research team right now, which is the indirect effect of 2 other initiatives on enrollment and retention for our system, and that is direct admissions, number 1, and number 2, the presidents and their teams' investment of some dollars the chancellor has allocated over the last 2 years for adult learners, for adult learning resources, advising, recruitment at our universities. We have a belief in my staff and our IR team that there is some indirect return in both of those areas, in the widening of the funnel of students who think about coming to us, in their perceptions once they've joined us, and in their persistence rates as they're moving through their programs. We'll have more to say about that in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions the trustees may have.
Thank you. And that great news. And as you know, these have been priorities, especially retention for the board. So it's music to our ears. And we all know that as the demographic cliff keeps going down and fewer students, keeping up this kind of extraordinary work is really important. So thanks to everybody. Questions, comments for Vice Chancellor? Trustee Martin.
Thank you for that report, Vice Chancellor. I just want to take a moment. I think we should all clap. This is amazing. We need to celebrate these successes. It's been a lot of hard work around the table, around all the campuses in the system office. Thank you very much. This is really encouraging.
That's the best kind of question, Chair, where there's just clapping. Thank you.
With, go ahead, I'm sorry. I had one question. Again, all great news. Congratulations to everybody who's responsible for those numbers, starting with the chancellor and the presidents and your office, and it's just great news. One question, and maybe not prepared to answer today. I was looking at total head count by gender, and I know that these are national trends, and we're probably right on line with every other state. But when I see that 57% of our total head count is female and 41% is male, that's really troubling. And again, it's not directed at University of Maine. I suppose it's the same at every state university around the country. Is our institutional research team thinking about that, trying to figure out how to change those numbers a little bit?
We are in two areas, and I won't go too far into competitive advantage for us, but one is through direct admission. We're reaching more young male students who don't think of themselves as future University of Maine system students through direct admission. The other is how we market. We don't market in a way that positively acknowledges potential differences in how some populations of students are thinking about college versus other populations, and to the extent that we're more nuanced in how we do that, we'll get better results. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff is part of my presentation, so I keep trying to get him to stay.
Carol, you promised you could do this quickly because I know the heat is on the food, so let's go.
Okay, I'm good. I have two things before you today. One is just to bring back the 7 strategic plan KPIs, key performance indicators that have been presented to you previously. They were created collaboratively. You've already reviewed them. We've taken all of your feedback, incorporated that into the materials that you have before you, and it's now just time for you to go ahead and approve those as our formal KPIs that, as you remember, we will be reporting to you here at the board level. There are lots of other metrics and measurements that we'll be reporting at the committee level and in different reports, but these are the 7 primary ones that you have already agreed upon for the board. With one slight exception to what is in your material, we realized that on number 6, fiscal and infrastructural sustainability, we had the 2022 baseline number, which was, I think, 2.3. Everything else was a 2023 baseline, so we updated that to now be 2023 1.9. Very minor change with what you'll see, but I believe that is one of the tabs for your approval.
Comments or questions? Trustee Kane?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was not able to be at the September meeting, but I just want to say thank you especially to Carolyn and Jeff for all their work on this, taking the feedback, condensing it down, making it manageable, trackable, clear, transparent, all the things. It has been a labor of, I'll say love. I don't know what word they would say, but it has been a labor nevertheless, and it's really comprehensive, and I think it will serve us well as a pretty clean, high-level look, while at the same time, the remainder of the strategic plan is reflected in the committee work plans, which are also very much more detailed and will be ongoing as well. But I just wanted to offer public thanks for that hard work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Trustee Alexander?
I agree with Trustee Kane's comments. I wonder if this is the sort of thing that would appear on our web portal?
Yes.
Okay. And so I just have some suggestions I'll give you informally about how to highlight what I think is the key columns here, and just emphasize the fact that we are measuring what we're doing, and we have a plan to get there. And that's a big public statement that I think needs to be highlighted. Thank you.
Happy to meet with you on that.
Any other comments or questions? And I would ask if you can stay, why don't we want to do the contracts while you're at the up?
Yep, that's what I
Okay.
plan, that's
Okay,
next. That's
good.
my second.
All right,
Yep.
cool.
We have to vote on this.
We do, I know, I just wanted to make sure. She didn't run away.
Tab 8 and 9.
Yep, so why don't we, that the Board of Trustees approve the UMS strategic plan KPIs and metrics as presented, and will receive updates on KPI status at future board meetings. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Michaud. Comments? All those in favor? Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Thank you, it passes. And now we will talk about collective bargaining.
Right. I'm very pleased to bring before you two tentative agreements from our bargaining units. UMSA, which is our professional salary, and AXM, our classified hourly staff. We appreciate the discussions with these groups, these bargaining units, and before you today are two tentative agreements with those groups. They've been fully explained, and hoping that you will authorize the Chancellor to move forward with those agreements.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, that the Board of Trustees authorizes the Chancellor to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the University of Maine Professional Staff Association, MEA, UMSA, upon notice that the agreement has been ratified. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Kane, seconded by,
Trustee Martin, and then I was in second.
I'm so used to you. Trustee Martin, seconded by
I'm
Trustee Kane.
everywhere.
Comments, questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Motion passes. Tab 9.
I said them both
Yep.
at once. So you-
That the Board of Trustees authorizes the Chancellor to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the Association of Clerical Office Laboratory Technical Staff at the Universities of Maine upon notice that the agreement has been ratified. Moved by Trustee Misha, seconded by Trustee Kane. All's right with the world. Could I,
Comment. My
Comment.
comment is simply just to say that there are quite a few folks who work on these and got some very good resolution in some very difficult times, and certainly Vice Chancellor Dorsey and Susan Cameron and Amy Parker and Vice Chancellor Lowe all participated in these, and as well as I'm sure the Chancellor. I just wanted to say these things don't happen easily, and they don't happen quickly, and I'm very thankful for what they've done.
great, thank you. Well said. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Great, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
That's it, thank you.
And we are almost on time. We will break for I don't think we need the full hour. We did, you'll remember when we restructured the meeting, which we still need to talk about, but when we restructured, one of the things we thought about was because we don't have a Sunday evening, we could have more informal lunch and be able to chat in Wells Room 1 and veranda, and we basically collect. Okay, it said 2. Okay. Anyway, there's places, small tables, right? No? Right, there's small tables. So grab your lunch, have an opportunity to talk with each other, but let's make it, let's be back here at 1:15. Can we do that? All right, then we are adjourned till 1:15. Enjoy your lunch. Reconvening. Hope everybody had a little break for lunch and had a chance to chat.
So are we going back to the Chancellor?
We are going back, we're all set, right?
Now we're going to,
Yeah, okay, we are going to Finance, cha-ching, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, Ryan Lowe. And it's tab 10 in your books.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 3 items for you this morning. I'm going to talk about investment results, the FY25 budget forecast, and then we'll wrap up with an action item. So for the for investment results, definitely need my glasses. Investment results are in your board materials. Managed investment pool with a market value of $383 million at the close of September. Saw a gain of 1.8% for the month. It's up 11.8% for the fiscal year. Our advisors estimate that we lost about 2% in the month of October.
Our members? Oh, there he is, okay.
We're good.
The eye test.
This is the next thing
Yep.
we're doing. Pension fund with a September market value of $18.3 million. Saw a gain for the month of 0.9% and 7.2% year-to-date. For the month of October, we estimate a loss there of 1.7%. And then finally, the operating fund with a September market value of $312 million. Saw a gain of 0.9% for the month. It's up 2.8% fiscal year to date. That's through October, and that equates to a year-to-date return of $7.6 million. That is over our annual budget by $5.1 million for the first quarter. We do, however, estimate a loss in October of 0.6%, and November is back up, and so it's as is always the case when I'm up here, it is up and down. I'd like to roll from here into the budget forecast. So just a reminder for our returning trustees and a heads up for our new trustees. We do a budget forecast for the current year 3 times a year. We'll do one in October, January-ish, and we'll do another one in March. Really just how are we doing quarter of the way through the fiscal year, halfway through the fiscal year, and so on. As Jeff said, I'll start. I do have some negatives, but I will mostly focus on the positive because it really is a really good picture. I'll start by saying that this is the first time in more than 7 years that I have not used this budget meeting to make substantial revisions to campus budgets. 7 years in a row, we've used this November meeting and then the January meeting to make budget revisions at least 4 or 5 campuses, and then we follow up in January with a couple of more. We are not doing that this round. It does not by any means mean that we don't have budget challenges. We do. Campuses are struggling. Campuses are making difficult choices. But they're doing a great job in actually literally putting together their budgets based on realistic assumptions, and you can see that in the results through the first quarter of the fiscal year. I'll walk down through each of them. Again, just to help you understand this, we'll start with the University of Maine at the top. The budget, that is a reflection of where the campus thought that they would end up back when the trustees passed the budget back in May. So at that time, the University of Maine, in this case, was forecasting a $4.7 million budget deficit. They were closing that. If you were looking at the budget version of this, you'd see originally there was about $4.7 million over in the reserve column that was going to get that balance back into budget, that budget back into balance. You see the October forecast. The deficit now is at $4.3 million, so it's actually gone down by about $400,000. Meaning that the transfer from reserves will be $381,000 less projected through October anyway. Quickly go through some of the other campuses. Again, you're always, as I mentioned, started off talking, we're always going to have adjustments. We're doing these enrollment forecasts almost a year in advance, sometimes more before students show up. So even if we get the enrollment exactly right, which we don't always get it right, what is challenging is the mix of students. So we may, if you look at Farmington, for instance, the credit hours are almost exactly what they projected a year ago, but what's not exactly the same is the mix of in-state and out-of-state and NEBI, and that will throw off revenue at some of our campuses, and that's what you see here. So at the University of Maine, Augusta, you can see about 324,000 in the other direction, although what I'll note here is, we're talking degrees of a surplus here. So UMA in this case was originally forecasting a $1.1 million surplus. It's now down to $800,000. That's what we want. We want campuses to forecast where they think they're going to end up and not be conservative and plug in zeros. And so even though this is going down slightly, it's still very positive news at UMA. I'm going to skip Farmington for a second and end with them. Fort Kent, again, fairly close, strong credit hours. What is off is the mix, which you see at a lot of our campuses. So that is off by about $200,000 from the original budget. And as we roll forward, you'll see we'll start resolving some of these gaps. Presque Isle, just to continue the narrative that Jeff talked about, really strong enrollment there. They were originally forecasting a $1.7 million budget surplus. They're now forecasting that up to as much as $2 million, so $361,000 improvement there. Just as good, although there's no numbers, so we really love this, is USM and Maine Law are right on budget. That's perfect. That's what we're looking for. So great work by Justin, great work by Nicole and their teams at those two campuses. So it shows you collectively across the campuses, we're down about $1 million from where we started. Most, or actually all of that is at Farmington. We see the gap at Farmington, we're projecting at about 1.2 million. I'll break that into two buckets. About 400,000 of that is on the auxiliary side, about 70 to 80 students less in the dorms than we had originally budgeted for, and that results in less dining and dining revenue and housing revenue. The bulk of the gap at Farmington is in the E&G side. It is about $800,000. There are some variables in there. Waivers are up. Athletic travel postseason is up. The mix of credit hours isn't producing quite the same revenue, but there are positives there. Early college is up, graduate is up. Those are helping to offset that. But what is coming up short from our estimates last year is attrition. And so again, attrition is this churn of employees that we expect. And so if I'm wearing my budget hat, I'm going to suggest that, that's a bad thing from a budget perspective, that we're coming up about 700,000 or 800,000 short. The other side of that coin is that, employee stability at Farmington is stabilized. People aren't turning over as much as they were 2-3 years ago when we were having uncomfortable conversations about budgets and retrenchments and things like that. So, from a budget perspective, that's challenging, and it's going to make the work for President McDonald and Lori a little bit more challenging, and we'll be back to talk about it at future meetings. But underlying, it's positive that more employees are sticking around, but we're going to pay a budget price for it. Last piece at the bottom are our system funds. I'd mentioned this before. They are all on budget with what we expected. In the university services unallocated line, we budgeted a deficit there because we had reserves from a prior year that we were going to roll forward. So we intentionally underfunded ourselves so we could pull those money forward and use those so we didn't have to charge the campuses and then return resources. So the deficit there was absolutely planned. And then the final line there is the unrestricted investment income, which I did just talk about earlier, and it's running about $5 million ahead. And my final item is tab 10, I believe, tab 10 or tab 11.
Tab 11, the master.
Oh, 10 and 11,
master
okay.
lease.
My notes said both, all right.
Right,
So-
maybe, let me
Yep.
just, because this is a lot of information, good information. Anybody have any comments or questions about this report on the budget?
Did someone say Lee balanced the budget? That's.
We did it with our new football team.
Yeah.
Trustee Cates, did you?
I'm just going to say that he already said it, but very different picture than a year ago when we were beginning to realize we're going to have some very difficult decisions to make about getting those budgets in balance by the end of the fiscal year. It's a lot different now.
Trustee Micho?
Yeah, it's unrelated, but it's related. I know in the Revenue Forecasting Committee, how is that, the projection there going to affect your estimation, what's happening here?
Really bad. So
Next
December.
question?
Yeah. So strongly encourage you to show up at the December FFT meeting. We'll be talking about the 5-year forecast of revenues and expenses. And one of the big lines that we have, our two biggest drivers are students and state appropriation. Over on the other side, state is, its 4-year budget forecast is $1 billion shortfall now, which is stunning. But you've been through that exercise before. Some of the numbers in there are artificially inflated. It's never as bad as that initial number initially indicates, but it's bad enough that it means that they're not handing out resources. And so we've put in our request, and the CEFC met recently. You know, the things that are going on in the economy, they're not negatives. Nobody is forecasting that the recession is going to start 2 months from now. But what has happened is, you know, these growth rates that were 8 and 9% are now 4. And so that's still great, but it's not enough to keep up with that spending that was going faster than 4%, for instance.
Thank you.
Anybody else on that happy note? Okay, Master Lease.
And the last item, I'm standing in for Tracy Elliott, the controller, on this one. This is a Bank of America reimbursement resolution. These come before you on a regular basis. In fact, they generally come about once a year if we've done this right. We go out, we have a master lease agreement with Bank of America. So as you think about this, we've got campuses that are purchasing vehicles and capital equipment on a regular basis. And so we pool all of those needs up. And once a year, we go out for financing. In the short term, we'll use cash to pay for those. And then what this language allows us to do is we go out, we'll secure those funds, and then we'll actually just reimburse ourselves for the work that we've done.
Any questions on that? If not, let's go to the resolution on tab 11, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the FFT Committee and declares official intent for system reimbursement from the proceeds of tax-exempt obligations for certain capital expenditures funded by the system prior to the issuance of such tax-exempt obligations. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Micho, seconded by Trustee Kane. Comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Great, thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. And we are on to research and innovation with Vice Chancellor Farini Mundy.
Which way? Yeah, okay. It's coming shortly. Good afternoon, everybody. It's been a while since I gave you an update, and I wanted to highlight a few things. This is not a full-blown report, but it is a bit of an interim report on what we're doing to foster the development system-wide of R&D and innovation, and a few things that I'd like to feature particularly. So here's what we'll cover, and I won't go into a lot of detail on all of this because you have the material in your binder. But consistent with what the strategic plan says that we are to do relative to research development and point toward them. Research development and innovation, I'd like to just highlight the first action, which is about basically growing our R&D and innovation enterprise system-wide. That's been a commitment really since the formation of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation position. And there are some good reasons for that beyond just it's always good to have more research, which is not a very substantive reason, actually. It's good because it is important for our students. You heard earlier about the impact of the research learning experiences on helping with retention and helping with keeping students engaged and attracted to our system. The only way those can happen is when you have a very robust base of research happening across our faculty, across the entire system. Otherwise, it's difficult to engage the students in authentic research experiences unless that's happening. So there's a student focus for this that I think is relevant, and then there's a focus for the state of Maine, since so much of what we do across the system, and increasingly even, is expanding to make a difference in the state of Maine and in the preparation of a workforce for the state of Maine. And then finally, it's because that's what universities also do. They build the knowledge base, they expand technologies, they help us grow, and this system is very much a part of that work. So I wanted to just say a bit about what we're doing to try to expand our R&D enterprise here at the university system. One thing that we have done is to convene a research leaders group, the RLG. We're trying to see if that acronym will stick. So far, I think I'm the only one who really says it very often, but that's okay. More importantly, this group is meeting quarterly now, regularly, and having, I think, extremely robust discussions about where we're trying to go as a system. And to me, the most important part of our discussions has been that the members of this group are working very hard to talk about the research identity of their own individual institution, because our institutions will all be a little bit different in what they want to do and what they have capacity to do in this R&D and innovation enterprise. And so we've been doing work, and I want to credit Jason Charland particularly for his great help, work to interview different members of different campus groups to understand, well, what's the focus going to be for your university? What makes sense for you, given your faculty, their expectations, their background and expertise, your location? A couple of findings from those activities, and they're going to be very important in the addressing of the strategic plan, is that the place-based nature of our universities turns out to be really quite important for research and development. Because questions that might be of interest in a community, in a location, in a part of Maine, are the kinds of questions that sometimes our faculty members choose to take up and to study. So issues of marine science in the Machias area, for example. And the research only can be done in those locations because the questions are particular to those locations. So that's community engaged research is what that is called, and we're looking to amplify that, to help faculty have more resources, more training, more readiness to do that sort of work. A second theme that we're seeing across all of these conversations is research that happens in the classroom. So you might call it research that's fully integrated with teaching, or the scholarship of teaching and learning, which is another dimension of it, or any number of other names for this. There is interest in that, and that's a very smart approach for us to take, I believe, because our faculty have substantial teaching loads across many of our institutions, and so if they're going to do research, if they can combine it with their teaching, so much the better. And secondly, that's a way to engage the students, which we're agreeing is an important thing to do. So this group of people has been fantastic and shows up at the meetings and is bringing a lot of great ideas to enrich how we think about where we're trying to go in the system. There are a few examples, too, that have come out of these kinds of discussions that illustrate our intentionality now about addressing challenges and needs in the state of Maine. And this is one, a project that President Edmondson and I jointly launched, the Rural Issues Symposium held a couple of weeks ago on the Orono campus, but it had an online component. And the focus was to be, what research activity do we have going on across this system that might actually be relevant for rural states, and in particular for the state of Maine, with a focus on resilience, revitalization. So you can see great materials at the website if you're interested, but a couple of pieces of information, big attendance, so you see how many participants we had, but also great partners, and some of them included the Maine Arts Commission, the Maine USDA, the Maine CDC, the Island Institute, the Outdoor Sport Institute, MDIBL, and the Rural Futures Fund. So these kinds of convenings can show off the good work that's happening within the system, but also amplify the partnerships that enable our research efforts to be meaningful and relevant for the state. Another place where we, I think, have a very nice statewide focus is through the MEIF Small Campus Initiatives, something that's been going on for a number of years now. And over the years, we've been able to broaden the group of people who are interested in applying for those Small Campus Initiative Awards. So I'd highlight number 4, the drone workforce and community economic development work that's happening at UMaine Augusta. Or number 9, remediating heavy metals and PFAS contaminated wastewater that is happening. I believe that's a UMaine project. No, that might be an UMPI project. In any case, projects that are bringing together people across the system based at our different universities, but that are actually focused on real problems in the state of Maine and bringing knowledge from our system to solving those. And that remote vehicle, yeah, that bought that? Oh. Did you get it repaired? Good. Right. So this enables some of the research that gets done by UMPI scientists out in the field in difficult areas to occur. Thank you, Ray. All right. So in order to do this, so much is happening that we're very, I think, excited about and should be excited about. What we're trying to do at the University of Maine is make resources that have been UMaine-centric, to make them as available as we can system-wide. And that is drawing a lot of interest and involvement, including a couple of things that I would highlight. The Humane System Grants Academy, that's about grant writing, and run by folks in our Office of Research Development at the University of Maine. There's a mentoring program called Empower that's actually it's broader than just our system. It's a nationwide program, and it's connecting faculty with interested mentors who can be, again, across the system. And then finally, a wonderful research and innovation speakers series where we've had more than 700 attendees since we started it in 2022. So trying to highlight the research and support it and grow it. The next several slides, which I'm actually not going to talk through in detail, are specific examples of grants that have come in the last few years that illustrate the kinds of things that I've been discussing. How do we engage students in research in significant ways? How do we tackle problems that matter in the state of Maine? And these awards are starting to come now. They have been over the years always coming across the system, but we're looking to see more of that happening. And so here you see an award at UMaine Farmington that's looking at issues with hormone receptors in fish, but very intentionally creating research opportunities for students. So our undergraduates can get to be a part of this work. It's not happening remotely in the lab or the field without their involvement. You see a project at USM, again, very interesting interdisciplinary project that involves students as well and has some local issues that are of relevance there. Just continuing on, there are many more. There's an STEM project, that's an NSF project. Oops. Let's back up to this one. This is Northern States Research Cooperative, UMPI, folks working on DNA gathering in the environment and led by Jason Johnston, again involving students. And so this is where you see the environmental piece, the place-based location piece being important, because this work is happening in that part of the state, and therefore it adds to the picture that we're forming for the entire state as that work goes on. Okay. This is the STEM project. It's a project based at the University of Maine in their School of Marine Sciences. It's an education grant from the National Science Foundation. It's workforce focused. It's how do we help students pursue degrees in the marine science areas, but within a research context. So the idea is that they're close to the research and therefore are prepared with current cutting edge activities. We have stepped up our engagement through our partner Cornerstone, engagement with the federal government, activity, and now have well established an annual University of Maine system call for ideas where the campuses are encouraged and invited each fall to put forward concepts, some of which would be considered for congressionally directed spending or earmark consideration, some of which might be competitive ideas for the federal government. Others are open maybe to private or philanthropic support, and then internal support through our many projects with Transforms and MEIF and RRF. So that work has gone well and is continuing to grow. Great gratitude to Senator Collins, Senator King, and Representatives Golden and Pingree for their support on the CDS side. So a lot happening, great activity across the system and growing activity, and I'm pleased to be able to have the chance to just tell you a little bit about it.
That's great. Thank you, really exciting stuff. And we saw Research in Action. Our newest trustee came to the meeting yesterday from scuba diving where he was doing research as part of his UMaine Machias work.
Yes, yep. I mean, it's I hope making a difference for students, and we are seeing some research
We're
evidence.
worried he
that
might get
it's-
pneumonia, but it's
Yeah, yeah, be careful. Great.
Comments, questions? Lisa?
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. It was great. Something that intrigued me was your Innovation Speaker Series. I don't know who that's open to, whether that's something that the trustees
Jason,
could.
you're here, right? That's open to everybody, right?
Open to everyone. It also seemed to me that if you opened it even wider, it might dovetail with fundraising because people would be interested, but it just
That's great.
looked great, very
And,
exciting.
thank you to Jason and his team for organizing that. What's the next topic, Jason? Sorry. Okay, so.
All of those sessions are recorded, so we'd be happy to have you view them. Such as AI, undergraduate research, you name it, you're probably going to find it. As the president mentioned, we've been doing it since fall of 22, so lots of offerings. Love the idea of outside speakers. I think we've had a few partners from
Thank you. Trustee McCarthy.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. And my question's more connected to how the state R&D plan and how we fit into that and where the future that's going. I remember when you presented on that a few meetings ago that the state was at 1% of GDP, wanted to get to 3% of GDP for R&D. And I've seen in the last few months, you and Sam Warren and others have done a great job of talking about our impact on the state, e.g. the caribou russet, which is the leading potato in the $1.3 billion industry, which is great. But the question is like, how is that all coming together and how do we play there and how do we lead as we imagine building that?
So Trustee Cates may not remember, but he did ask me several years ago to make the list of the 10 things that we could say, like in short phrases, were areas where the University of Maine system research had made a difference. And so far, we've caribou russet, we've got that one. And there are many others, it's just hard to compress them down. So the state R&D plan, it's the topic of discussion in MEAB regularly, as well as in some of the workforce discussions, mainly with focus on the R&D investment by the private sector. And the argument that it would be nice if there were more of that. But that's really hard in a state like Maine whose population is small, it is a rural state. We're not a place that has a lot of companies that are basing themselves here with their R&D operations here. So that investment doesn't come. That's one issue. Although there's a fair bit of interest in how to amplify that in partnership with the University of Maine or in the University of Maine system. Number two, I think, is the matter of how do we do this without national labs, for example. So many states that have national labs that are drawing huge federal dollars for R&D, you build an ecosystem in a state that's not possible here. But I think lots of commitment. I will thank Sam Warren for her incredible help in making sure that the story is out on the system-wide R&D. And I just think it's a constant step up our work in getting that messaging out and also trying to help explain what it does cost to kind of have that ecosystem in a state.
John, could you, the RLE has, see, the problem with RLG is it sounds too much like RLE.
Oh, yeah, no,
Maybe
no,
that's
it's just
the
another example in the same list. Yeah, you're right, that's true.
Could you, I've been so, since we had that presentation and we heard from the students, I've been so intrigued by it. How many students are now enrolled in RLE and how many more could be?
Okay. 1,400 system-wide, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think that's another untold story here about the extraordinary, this huge research operation, and students can be in every piece of it.
So,
and I don't know who else offers
I mean,
such an
our
opportunity.
provost, of course, is our leader for us on the system level with President Hedin. And so I think there's a great story there. But increasingly, I think, John and Deb, the story on the gateways work and the story on the internship work, those are all parts of that same student success. That's unfolding as well. And yes, I do think making the RLE story widely known is important. I want to come back to an earlier point that I made, though. To do RLEs well, particularly on smaller campuses, faculty have to be able to have time to be engaged enough in research to make this a part of how they bring students in. And so we're exploring some, I think, very interesting directions in terms of research on the RLEs themselves, research on learning experiences, and other innovations that are happening on our campuses where you could study them and engage students in studying those efforts.
Great. Other questions? Wonderful, thank you. It's good news. Are you going to speak to us about the tenure issue?
I don't think so. I think that's Jeff, yes?
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. Great report. And let's just take a second because we've had good news before in the system, and it hasn't been covered very well. We now have great news, and it's getting great coverage, and I'd just like to do a shout-out to Sam Warren for her extraordinary work. And I know it takes a village, but Sam's on the front line, and she really has done wonderful, wonderful work. And I'm sorry, Jeff, I turn to you now.
Oh, no, this one's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
So this was first developed through the ASA committee. The University of Maine is requesting an exception to the board's policy on the number of prior years of credit that can be awarded toward tenure. Normally that's 3. In this case, we have an accomplished senior scholar who came to UMaine a couple of years ago as part of a spousal hiring accommodation. Had a tenure stream line been available at the time that this scholar was hired, this would have been a tenure at the time of hire request. In this case, we're asking for 4 years of credit toward tenure instead of 3, because a tenure line is now available. The university would like to move this person into that line and tenure him at the earliest opportunity because he's a catch for the university and for our system. I'll add that he's a scholar, a nationally known scholar on Robert Frost. So if a flagship university in New England can't tenure a scholar on Robert Frost, we have a big problem on our hands. So there we go. Thank you.
Whose woods are these? I think I know.
I'll go take a road.
I fully support this request.
I'm thrilled that it's for humanities. So the text is that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic Student Affairs Committee and approves an exception to Board Policy 310. Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Kane. Any comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring.
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy.
Yes.
Thank you. And now we move on to Robert Placido, Chief Information Officer's report, and our favorite topic, the Unified Catalog.
Thank you. Glad to be last. Great job getting back on schedule. Amazing. So I wanted to just remind everybody that the Unified Catalog Initiative is a collection of about 18 major projects. It's going to be a great case study for higher education in the future as a way to get things done. While it may feel like it's taken forever, we've uncovered every gap and worked on just about everything you could work on inside a university system all at once. And so lots has been done. And I'm fortunate to be here sort of for the wrapping of the bow on this thing and the last few components of this. So I just wanted to give you an update on some of those things and where we are on them. So first one is, and again, this is a culmination of effort, is we've added a tool called Course Auditor. And this will help us to identify the gaps in our degree audit system. So imagine you're a student and you need to know where you are in the pipeline of your career. And you need to be able to see what courses do I need to finish, right? That seems like a logical thing. It's really complicated these days because we have people who come in after 40 years of, life experience and 20 community colleges and all of this, and all of that has to sort of be merged into our data systems and kept up with. So now we're implementing tools to help the people who manage this data to spot errors and those things more quickly, so that when they run those degree audits, they're clean and transparent for students in the first place. The final piece of that, another software package that will get added after this, is a more easy-to-use tool for the students, so they have ready access to that degree progress and that pathway. We need to make sure that data is clean, so that we don't elicit a lot of questions and errors and those kinds of things. So that's what we're working on really hard this semester and next semester with all the folks at the president's teams are diligently working on this. So the software is sort of a trivial piece. My team implements it, but it's going to expose a lot of work. So phase one of this course auditor process has been going well. Software installed. We're calling it about 60% complete. We've met with the teams, offered them additional vendor training so they can learn to use the tool and those kinds of things. So I'm happy with that. Not sugarcoating anything, all of these projects are bumpy roads, right? And we have to overcome a lot. I'm really proud of not just my team, but the campus's ability to just really lean in on all of this. And they understand that next fall, we're tying a bow on this one way or another. So I think everybody gets that message. Brightspace, this project, while it's tangential, it was critical, a gap within the Unified Catalog project. We did not have an analytics platform for our learning management system, and that's where 90% of our business goes through. So under the pressure and guidance of President Rice this summer, This project didn't kick off until this summer, and we completed it November 1st. So congrats to his team, who really kept the vendors accountable and my team accountable. And the first phase of this was to make sure that the CBE program could be responsive, have the data they need to run the unique program that they run up there, and we're only going to see this grow more. The other universities are going to leverage this in ways that we don't even understand yet, but certainly right out of the gate have better insight into the learning experiences that happen on their campuses through their Brightspace platform. So, job done there. Parchment, we use them. It's a company that we use for a few different projects. One we're implementing this fall is their transcript and diploma project, so that we can deliver diplomas easier from our campuses. That's a nice value add. Just kicked this one off. We're 70% complete, and we expect to deliver that December 10th. So hopefully the theme is being repeated here, that faster, quicker and faster for all these implementations. And I think we're better at isolating them too. So we're not thinking about, well, what's the next phase and the next phase? And, well, we got to do the whole thing all at once. No, we have to do phase one. We have to do it well, and we have to finish on time. So Boomi is, I'll talk a little bit more about that when I ask for some money later. Or approval to spend money, I'll modify that. But this is a major gap that I recognize. My team internally recognized it was a gap of theirs. Really, they didn't have the tools that they needed to do fast implementations. And so they always struggled with this. I think I've mentioned this a number of times to you. So we went out to RFP. The product is called Boomi. It's best of breed, so it's really nice to be able to afford what everybody else uses. And this will tie in our 50, 60 critical systems together so that data can flow more freely, more real time. Even important processes right now, like our admissions process, where we have the internal student system and we have Salesforce. Those things are a nightly, if we're good, copying the data. So if a student is getting a message in one system, they're waiting 1 to 2 days to see that same, message in another system. We'll be able to do those kinds of things real time, so both systems are synced. We kicked this off we kicked it off about 2 weeks after I got my boots on the ground, but we began with the vendor in earnest November 1st. We've already had 2 weeks of intensive training with internal IT folks. So we are rolling fast on this. And we expect to be up and running soon, but really get some major integrations done before the end of the spring semester. Last thing I'll mention is the unified course search. This is kind of, this is the point, right? You wanted a transparent system where students could look across the whole state and say, where can I achieve this learning? And that should be, it's initial phases of tying that up with the vendor and the teams, but we do expect to deliver that this spring as well, the end of the spring. Happy to answer questions or go right into the request.
So I have a question. Are we dating ourselves calling it a catalog? It's a search.
Sure, yeah.
Any questions for Robert? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. President Rice?
This is more of a comment and a thank you. I just came back from the annual meeting of CBEN, Competency-Based Education Network out in Colorado Springs, and a lot of conversation about Brightspace, which is the preferred platform for most institutions using competency education. And they were stunned that we didn't have Performance Plus when we launched. So very interesting to note that that's just an assumed, component of the analytics that institutions need. And by note, those leaders using Brightspace and those analytics are using it for all of their courses across all platforms, not just in competency, obviously. So it's my thanks for a really important tool to help our students be better learners and ourselves better teachers.
So, thank you, sir.
Great. And I know we thank you for your diligence in getting this on track and on time so that we have a unified search.
Yeah.
Course.
Okay, good. I like it.
Trustee McMahon?
Robert, can you comment on how these new innovations are going to reduce the time from application to acceptance?
Actually, I owe you a deeper explanation at FFT, but he asked a question about return on investment for one of the projects we just closed out, which is Raptor, which is a transcript service. Absolutely speeds up the process. Well, it's interesting, when I went back to say, let's put pen to paper and do an ROI calculation for the board, it caused a conversation that was is interesting. I don't know. The best way I can explain this is if you're baking cookies, you mix the cookies, you put them on a pan, you put them in an oven, you let them cool off, and you put them in a box, right? So there's an operational step in each one of those. What the transcript service did is it automated batching the cookie mix. So we are super fast at making cookie mix, but we still need people to take the cookie mix out and put it on the pan. And so when we were trying to say, how much time did we save? What the teams were saying is, yeah, we're getting the transcript evaluations in a second. Now I'm overwhelmed because I have to do my job and evaluating them into the next phase. So I'm sort of providing that example because right now it's too early to calculate, and we're going to need, a few months or even a whole semester to say, okay, what did it end up saving in total at the end? But it's also causing us to understand what those bottlenecks are upstream so that we can buy more ovens and get more people getting them on the sheets or automate that part. And certainly in CBE, we're going to look to automate that whole thing because there's no way Ray can get to the scale that you all want him to get with manual processes. So best answer I have for you, sir.
Let me just pass on that we're running 1,900 acceptances ahead of last year right now.
Good. I'm concerned about this because who would put cookies in a box and not just eat them? Do you want to give us some Boomi background, or do we?
Yeah, if you like, I've already sort of told you about it, but the reason I'm here, so we already did purchase it this year, but it's under the threshold for a single-year purchase. What I'm asking for today is that we sign a 5-year contract, which then puts it over, so that would be a 2.499 number, and asking for your permission to do that today.
Any questions? Okay, let's go to the resolution, that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the FFT Committee and authorizes the University of Maine system to spend, you ready for this, $2,499,583.49 over a 5-year period to purchase and implement the Boomi integration platform.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Michaud, seconded by Trustee Kane. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Appreciate
May
you.
the progress continue.
Yeah.
I want to turn to the consent agenda, but before, we need a little bit of background information that was not in the A-sheets, and Vice Chancellor St. John is going to provide that.
Thank you, Chair. We got two good questions from trustees following the Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting about one of the two academic program proposals that are on your consent agenda, the AS Associate of Science degree in cybersecurity at UMA. The two questions, both excellent, and I have a quick two-part answer for each. The first is, what's the fit of this program within our broader set of programs? And the second question is, how will it help provide additional opportunity for students across our system? The answer to what's the fit is, this fills an explicit gap in our programming across our system and at UMA. So UMA offers a bachelor's degree, Bachelor's of Science in Cybersecurity, and a Master's of Science program. Having an associate's degree completes the trifecta and allows students to come in at any point and earn courses toward that program. It will also be the only Associate of Science degree in cybersecurity anywhere in our system. So it's an opportunity for students coming from any Maine community college or any other external community college student or other transfer student to come in and start at the AS level if the student would like to do so. The second question, again, how will it help provide additional opportunity? Very smartly, the faculty and Provost Zakis developed this program to be entirely online. So any student can access these courses from anywhere in our system or from outside of our system for that matter, if interested in taking arts and associates in science degree. And I should note that all of the courses were already existing within the bachelor's program. So UMA has taken an existing set of faculty resources, an existing set of courses, and created a new credential out of them that plugs a gap and helps students develop a progression toward higher levels of training, education in cybersecurity. Secondly, I would note that because the program is online, it's accessible to a much greater extent, not only for adult learners, adult transfers, but of course UMA's existing population, which is heavily adult, and quite a few students who take courses primarily online. And then the last piece I'll say is that because there are similar programs, same or similar programs in cybersecurity at the bachelor's level at UMPI and Fort Kent, and of course a graduate program in cybersecurity at UMA and USM. There's an opportunity for students who want to earn this degree and then either stay at UMA or go elsewhere and progress toward master's level training in our system to do so because this first step is now being provided by UMA. And I regret not making that more clear at ASA, but I appreciate the questions and I hope that helps to address the gap in the presentation last month.
Thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Eames.
Thank you. I move for the Board of Trustees to approve the consent agenda items, acceptance of the minutes and the items as forwarded from the October 30th, 2024 FFT Committee and the October 28th, 2024 ASA Committee. The consent agenda items are tabs 16 through 22 in the meeting materials. Can I have a second? I'm going to change it up. Kelly. Trustee Martin. All those in favor? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
It all passes.
Great, great. Thank you all. This has been quite a busy agenda, great information shared. Next meeting is at the University of Southern Maine, January 12th and 13th. We are going to go into executive session to complete some information, some work that we did not complete in the morning session, to which all the presidents and others are invited. It's the whole gang. So could I have a motion for the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provision of 1 MRSA Section 4056C to discuss the condition, acquisition, or disposition of real property or economic development if premature disclosure of that information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of UMS. Moved by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Martin. All those in favor? All those opposed? Trustee Loring?
Yes.
Trustee Huzzy?
Yes.
Thank you. And do we go in the next room? And everybody will just convene in the next room, and I'm eager to get a start so that we don't keep you all evening. Where?